Good evening and welcome to this meeting of full council. I'm Clive Hooker, Chairman of West Berks Council. Before I start, I would like to explain for behalf of members of the public who may be watching that tonight's meeting is being held in a hybrid format. Following the expiry of the emergency corona regulations that permitted remote meetings, all of the council's public meetings must now take place in person at a single specified geographical location with a physical presence at that location. However, the current COVID safety capacity of the council chamber means that not all members are able to attend physically. And so for this meeting, we have 13 conservative members in the chamber. That is myself, Councillor Rick Jones, our Vice Chairman, Councillors Lynn Doherty, Steve Ardell-Water, Dennis Bennyworth, Dominic Bowick, Hilary Cole, James Cole, Tony Linden, Ross McKinnon, Thomas Marino, Claire Rolls, and Richard Sumner. There are 6 Liberal Democrat members in the chamber, and they are Councillors Adrian Abbs, Jeff Brooks, Billy Drummond, Owen Jeffrey, and Eric Pattenden, and also Tony Vickers. And 2 Green Party members, Councillors Caroline Culver and David Marsh, all in physical attendance. The numbers are representative of the political balance of this council. Other members of council are in attendance remotely. These members are entitled to speak and ask questions when invited to do so by myself. The majority of the officers attending the meeting and members of the public asking questions at today's meetings are also doing so remotely unless they have requested to physically attend the meeting. The officers in attendance, either in person or remotely, include Nigel Lynn, the Chief Executive, the Executive Directors, Sue Halliwell, Joseph Holmes and Andy Sharp. Sarah Clark will be the legal advisor to the meeting this evening. I'm assisted by Vicky Yule, the clerk to the meeting, and Phil Rumans, who will be acting as the Zoom host. Welcome to those honorary members and honorary aldermen and alderwomen that have joined us remotely. May I say good evening to Paul Bryant, Andrew Rolls and Quinton Webb. Gentlemen, nice to see you here this evening. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow the proceedings. I will now ask Sarah Clark to give some reminders about the way we conduct council using Zoom. Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, standard Zoom reminders will now be shown on the screen. In addition, if it becomes necessary for any members to telephone into the meeting, you won't be able to signal to speak. So once everyone has raised a Zoom hand, everyone who has raised a Zoom hand has spoken, the Chairman will be asked to invite anyone who has telephoned in to speak in order. Any voting necessary to take place will take place via Zoom hands for indicative votes or via the microphone technology. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the Chairman will adjourn and will advise as to the revised time and date of the meeting. If this is a short adjournment, you will be able to rejoin this Zoom meeting. Otherwise, a fresh appointment will be sent out. Do members have any queries regarding the way the meeting will be conducted this evening?
No, I think we're all clear. Members, before we start this evening's meeting, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind you all that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, importantly, respect. Members across the chamber may not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements, we endeavour to always be respectful of one another and of each other. It gives me great pleasure this evening, members, to welcome Nigel, our CEO, our Chief Executive, to his first council meeting. Nigel, welcome. It's very good to have you here with us. I hope you enjoy the evening and I hope you find it interesting. We now move on to item 1 of the agenda, which is for apologies. Mrs. Clark, do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from councillors Keith Woodhams, Jeremy Cottam and Lee Dillon. Gareth Hurley has also advised that he will be late in joining the meeting due to work commitments. We've also received apologies from Honorary Aldermen Adrian Edwards and Graham Jones.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. Do we have any apologies from the floor? Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Williamson sends his apology.
Thank you. Now move on to item 2, Chairman's remarks. Members, since our last full council meeting, we were all very saddened by the news of the sudden death of Peter Argyle, who passed away whilst in office in October, and former councillor Bob Judge, who also passed away in October. Can I please ask you all to stand for a minute's silence in respect of their passing? Thank you, members. I'd just like to say a few words regarding Peter. Members, you recall the very sad news received in October of the death of Councillor Peter Argyle following a long illness and his brave battle to overcome it. Before we start the council meeting this evening, I'd like to take a short moment to remember and reflect on Peter, the ward member for Tilehurst South and Holybrook, and a former chairman of this council. Peter was greatly admired and respected as a colleague and friend to us all and of the council, and he would be greatly missed. Peter was a committed public servant who served for 24 years as a councillor, having been first elected as ward member for Thiel in 1997, before representing the Calcott ward from 2003, and then Tilehurst South and Holybrook from 2019. He served 2 terms as chairman of council in 2011 and 12, and 2015 and 16. And he was chairman of the Personnel Committee. He was also an active member of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee and the Corporate Parenting Panel. On a personal note, I remember when I was elected vice chairman of council 2.5 years ago, when I followed Peter in that role, I was very appreciative of the advice and mentoring that he gave me at that time. And he often inquired how I was getting on and was there anything he could do to help. I found him a most true and caring gentleman. Peter's commitment to West Berkshire will remain a much deserved legacy to him and all those who life he touched. Our thoughts continue to go out to his family and his friends at this time. As Peter knows so many, others have asked to reflect on their time with him, and I'd like to ask Richard Sumner to say a few words on Peter. Councillor Sumner.
Chairman, thank you. This is not an easy one for me. Words you never want to say, this comes under. I first met Peter through being a parish councillor for Holybrook in 2007. He was always helpful, happy to support and guide everyone that spoke to him. And when I became his campaign partner in 2014, and we were both elected in 2015, I realised just how important that was to me in that new role. He was always there to guide me through my first years as a councillor, having been there for so many years before, and I relied on him immensely and the experience that he gathered over those years as a councillor. In that campaign, as in 2019, his energy and his dedication to the cause and to our residents was second to none, in my opinion. I will absolutely miss his counsel. I'll miss his support. I'll miss his infectious laugh and his friendship. And my thoughts and deepest condolences remain with his family and friends.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. I'd now like to invite Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. It's never easy to talk about somebody that you've lost. Peter was one of the people that first came up to me when I first became a councillor and offered me his help. And that's been a reoccurring theme from everybody that's spoken about Peter. He was a kind gentleman and he was always willing to go that extra mile for people. He actually, because I was children and portfolio holder, you could see the love for children shine through from Peter. He was a teacher himself and he was a consistent member on the corporate parent panel, and he often took part as well in the foster carer representative on the panel for many, many years. So Peter was a really kind, caring gentleman, but he also had that infectious laugh that you've spoken about. And one of the things that I will always take away with me from Peter was actually, for those of us that attended his service, was his eulogy, and actually how quite uplifting it was, because everybody felt that Peter had given so much to everybody and he could make people smile. Even to the end, he made people smile. For those of you that were there, the final tune that we had played was Only Fools and Horses. And it was just an uplifting experience. And that's how I want to remember Peter, as a kind, caring gentleman that touched on the lives of others and was able to bring joy to their lives.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. Tony Linden, Councillor Linden.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I've known Peter for decades, and certainly his late wife passed away, and he was very much in love with Margaret, and you could see that. I mean, his humour and friendship on the council was there. You know, I rejoined the council in the year 2000, so actively been with him for 21 years. He's always helpful, always had a sense of humour. Heavily involved when we had the Holybrook Festival. He was running the beer tent and things, and there's always a lot of fond memories of him, and he'll be sorely missed. It's always dreadful when you have a death in service, and he was a really, really nice man. Thank you,
Councillor Linden. Graham Bridgman, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. I've known Peter from the late 1990s. Because my wife and I were at that time members of the then Bingchief and Ford's Farm branch of the Reading West Conservative Association. And the first election that Peter stood in was also the first election for West Berkshire Council in '97. And we had what I thought was the rather splendid idea of suggesting to the voters that they voted for A, B, C, Argyll, Bedwell and Curry. And it worked. However, somewhat to our chagrin, the vote was for Argyll, Bedwell and Clay. Ho-hum. Of course, as Tony has just referenced, we recently sadly attended the funeral of Peter's wife, Margaret. Peter and Margaret were great fun, and they are both missed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. And finally, from the side of the House, Jeff Beck, Councillor Beck. When you're ready, Councillor Beck, we can see you. You're on mute at the moment.
Right, you are, Chairman.
Thank you. We can hear you now, Councillor Beck.
Do you wish my question?
Please. This is
Question C.
a small presentation on Councillor Argyll.
Huh. I have known Peter for a great many years, and he was what I would consider a great friend in both council matters and on the fringe of council matters. Like yourself, in your current role as acting as chairman, you come into each other's company at various events throughout the districts. And Peter was always extremely considerate to all the parties. And when I say parties, I'm talking about parties of people, not sort of celebration parties. His thirst for education, if I can put it that way, was very, very compelling. My late wife, Councillor Olmerbeck, worked with him on numerous committees and school visits, and also found him a very exhilarating person to be in the company of, and was welcomed into the schools. I will long remember Peter and his late wife. thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to say these few words.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. I now ask and invite Jeff Brooks. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. Now and again, you meet somebody in the opposition and you know straight away you're going to get on really well with them. You know they're going to be great to work with. You know you're going to respect them. Doesn't necessarily happen all the time, Chairman, but with Peter, it certainly did. He was, on our side, considered to be a lovely, lovely man, a character, a man who gave selflessly, tremendous respect from this side of the chamber for Peter Argyle. And he leaves a legacy of perhaps a gentler politics that we don't, and I don't mind saying I can be guilty of it, that we don't evidence as often as we should. And I don't think there's anybody in this chamber who won't look back with the greatest fondness for that man. He was a gentleman and a credit to know. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Does anyone else like to speak? Thank you. Members, I'd also now like to pay tribute to former councillor Bob Judge, who passed away on the 13th of October, and Bob was 82 years old. Bob's home was for many years in Thatcham, and he worked tirelessly for the town, being mayor 3 times and district chairman once. He served on Newbury District Council and was a founder member of the West Berkshire Council, on which he served until his wife, June, and he moved to Pembrokeshire to retire. He was one of the team that drove the creation of sports centres and swimming pools across our entire district from the 1990s until the early 2000s, which remain the bedrock of our sports and health offering in West Berkshire to this day. I'd now like to call on Owen Jeffrey. I'd like to say a few words in memory of Bob. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's going to take me a minute to get used to the idea of not standing up in a full council meeting. Mr. Chairman, fellow councillors, Robert Brian Judge was, I believe, always known as Bob. Like me, a Londoner, unlike me, a North Londoner. Bob and I both arrived in the 1970s in Thatcham because of work. He arrived first. And in Thatcham, we both caught the councillor bug. The first thing that should be said about Bob is that he and his family were driven by a strong and sustaining Christian faith. Every Sunday, he and June, his wife, would be found in the same pew with their family at St Mary's Parish Church in Thatcham. And it was this strong personal faith, I'm sure, that drove all aspects of his very committed life of service to others. He was committed to young people and was a scout troop leader for many years, but he didn't shy away from the sheer hard work and administration that comes with a role as a senior scouter in Taysom Scout District, forming lifelong friendships on the way. For council tonight, we would easily recognise one of that great team who, along with the late David Rendell, took control of Newbury District Council at a time when it seemed to have rather few ambitions for our district. Bob was a leading member of that team, as you have just referenced, Chairman, that insisted that we needed to do more than just collect council tax and collect black bins each week. Bob drove the council in its process of establishing sports centres and swimming pools from west to east, not missing Thatcham or Newbury. And I would agree with your words that 20 to 30 years on, those pools, those sports centres and pools are still a very fitting tribute to Bob's character and his work for our community. I can't close without noting, as you did indeed mention, that he was chairman of this council, and he sort of shared the mayoralty of Thatcham with June, his wife, for a few years. Tonight, I would ask council to remember a solid, determined, local citizen, representing the community of which he was a part to the best of his considerable abilities. The late Councillor Bob Judge.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Would anybody else like to speak on Councillor Judge? No, thank you, councillors, for those recollections. Very moving. Finally, members, my report. Since our last full council meeting, your vice chairman and I have attended 17 civic events. Thankfully, the lifting of the strict COVID regulations have once again allowed us to get out and about and represent you and the council in the district. During our visits, it's become even more apparent how dedicated the people of our district are in their generosity and in the time they give for our volunteer groups, charities, and various associations. I attended a celebratory gathering to mark Sue Campbell's extraordinary 40 years voluntary service at the Newbury Volunteer Centre when the Lord Lieutenant James Puxley presented her with a certificate of achievement to mark the occasion. And this was covered in the Newbury Weekly News today. I met Jane Westrop of the Newbury British Legion at the dedication of their new banner, who continues to oversee and orchestrate the Legion's events and ceremonies and has done so for many, many years. I also met a Mr. David Jones, who came up and introduced himself to me and tells me he spends hundreds of hours model making for them to be displayed for money to be raised for charity. I'm currently in discussion with Gabriele Mancini for his latest creation, which celebrates the NHS and all it's done to combat COVID, and for this to be displayed at the West Berkshire Community Hospital to hopefully raise money for medical equipment. Rick attended the launch of the Louise Purton Toy Appeal, which he particularly thought impressive and worthwhile, where money is raised to buy and give toys to disadvantaged children. I attended the High Sheriff's Judicial Service at St James Roman Catholic Church at Forbury Gardens in Reading to celebrate the start of the judicial year. And I also attended the British Horse Society annual award ceremony, where I was presented to the Princess Royal and was able to welcome her on behalf of Berkshire and this welcome her to Berkshire and of the residents and of this council. I also attended the county the county service of Thanksgiving for the life of the Duke of Edinburgh. At that service, people got up and spoke of their recollections of the Duke of Edinburgh. And as you can imagine, they were quite interesting, to say the least. Christine and I, my wife, joined the CEO, Nigel Lynn, at the Remembrance Sunday service held in the Market Square on the 14th of November, where many hundreds of residents attended to show their respects to all those that had given the ultimate sacrifice. And finally, on a personal note, on behalf of myself as chairman of this council and the 20 chairmen preceding me, I'd like to thank Jo Watt for her tremendous support and organisation skills she has given us all over the last 20 years plus. During that time, she has established an amazing working relationship with all the various organisations that invite the chairman to their events. Her dedication in all aspects to that role were outstanding, and I wish her well in the new role with the council. That concludes my report, members. I'd now like to move on to item 3, the minutes. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of September 2021 are a true and correct record. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Doherty.
Chairman, I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you. Would any member like to pass comment on those or any observation on those minutes? No. As all members have been able to raise amendments on the minutes and which have been considered, I do not intend to conduct an indicative vote on this. Voting on this item will therefore be restricted to those present in the chamber, and I will ask the monitoring officer to conduct the vote. Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I now ask members in the chamber, the voting options will be displayed on your microphones shortly. So can I please ask you to vote now? It's not working. It's not. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Can I suggest then that we revert to a show of hands for members in the chamber who are willing to approve the proposal to accept the minutes? Any members against or abstaining? Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that that proposal has been carried.
Thank you. We now move on to item 4, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest, please, Ms. Clark?
Thank you, Chairman. With regard to item 22, the notice of motions and the motion regarding the West Berkshire Council pensions divestment from fossil fuels, councillors Owen Jeffrey, Jeff Brooks, Tony Vickers and Billy Drummond have declared an interest in that item as they are all in receipt of a Royal County of Berkshire pension. It is my understanding that certainly Owen Jeffrey will be leaving the chamber. I believe that will be the same for all of those members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I got that the same from our deputy monitoring officer, but I'm actually not in receipt of the pension, but I did have a councillor pension policy, so I'd like the monitoring officer's advice if she feels I should withdraw from the chamber as well.
I'm not sure in terms of the policy. I think if there is any doubt, you should err on the side of caution and declare the interest in the interest of transparency. So I don't have sufficient detail, but I think my advice would be that you follow the advice of the Deputy Monitoring Officer and leave the chamber for the duration of that item.
I will do so, Chairman.
Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Linden. Members, I go back to item 3, which will get a hand vote on that.
Chairman, point of order. I've got my Zoom hand up.
I do apologise. Thank you.
Chairman, I know I'm not in the chamber and therefore wouldn't be voting anyway, but my wife is in receipt of a Berkshire pension, so I'll just take no part in the debate and nor in any indicative vote.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Members, I go back to item 3. A show of hands was made, and I will declare that I've signed those minutes. Thank you. We now move on to item 5, petitions. Can I please invite Councillor Masters into the chamber by Zoom, please, as he has a petition he'd like to present this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Council. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Councillor Masters. Thank you for joining us. Councillor Masters, we appreciate why you're not in the chamber tonight, but our best wishes from all the members go out to you and hope that everything as well as it can be with your family situation at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman. It's very much appreciated, and that things are easier than they were a couple of days ago. So thank you.
Okay. Now, you have 3 minutes to present your petition, and we listen now with interest. Thank you. You need to give the number of signatures. You need to give the number of signatures and the state the purpose of your petition. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I mentioned that there's almost 2,000 signatures, and will be handed over by Councillor Culver. I'll keep it relatively brief, and I'll aim not to give you the runaround or speak until Wednesday week. I'm sure that many, if not all present here this evening, are shocked and stunned by the ongoing revelations about the water companies continuing discharge of sewage in record amounts into the rivers and canals, not only across the country, but actually here in West Berkshire as well. And as Fergal Sharkey said during his solo career, we can't leave this to nature. The Undertones frontman is now an environmental campaigner trying to protect our precious and extremely precious chalk streams, many of which we have in our beautiful landscape here in West Berkshire. And he's now inspired almost, as I said, 2,000 people here in West Berkshire to sign the petition. And I'll go on to the detail of that in a second. People who are sick and tired of the water companies stepping out of line and having no real care for the environment that they're supposed to be protecting. We can't afford to leave it to nature, especially when those water companies are not doing what they can to, and we're having to pick up the pieces. Therefore, underinvestment, overdevelopment, and regulators with little or no real power to sanction the offenders have ensured that our local rivers and ultimately the country's coastal waters have been contaminated to levels that have not been seen for over 30 or 40 years. So we therefore, in this petition, request that West Berkshire Council writes to and requests a formal explanation from our local MPs as to why they voted down the Lord's amendments that would have placed greater legal duties on water companies in England and Wales to make the improvements to their sewage systems and demonstrate progressive reductions in the harm and legally binding reductions, that is, by the discharges of untreated sewage. We also petition the Council's Oversight and Scrutiny Management Commission, OSMC, to robustly question Thames Water at their scheduled appearance in March 22. OSMC should focus on the amount of discharge into the local waterways and the proposed investments and improvements to infrastructure that Thames Water are planning over the coming years. West Berkshire residents urge the Council to condemn the discharging of raw sewage into our waterways and call upon all stakeholders to work together to end this environmentally destructive practice that also damages and impacts public health.
And in conclusion, please.
Chairman. Just 1 second. We, the Council, have a moral, if not legal, obligation to ensure the waterways that crisscross our districts are clean and healthy, not only for our enjoyment, but to ensure our health and natural environment are protected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council, and you'll be relieved that now it's all over.
Thank you, Councillor Masters. I will now ask Councillor Culver to hand in that petition, please. If you could come up and give that to the monitoring officer. Councillor Masters, thank you for that presentation and submission of your petition.
Thank you.
This will now be taken away and reviewed by officers who will confirm to you within 10 days what action will be taken. Any other members have any petitions to submit this evening? No, thank you. We move on then to item 6. This is public questions. This is on pages 27, 28 on the agenda. I would like to thank all the members of the public who have submitted questions for this evening's meeting. Please note that in accordance with the new processes, your questions will appear on screen and will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You will then be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, but please remember that this must be to clarify the response provided and not introduce any new business. In accordance with paragraph 4.12.9 of the Constitution, when questioners have more than one question, only their first question will be answered. If after all other first questions have been asked and answered and there is sufficient time, we will answer subsequent questions. Please note that the time limit for public questions is restricted to 30 minutes, and if your questions have not been answered in that time, you will receive a written response within 5 clear working days. The responses given either verbally at the meeting or in writing will be published on the Council's website in due course. Mr. Rumans, could you please invite Mr. Graham Story into the chamber, please, by Zoom. He's here? Thank you. Councillor Cole, could you please answer Mr. Story's question, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, Mr. Story, and thank you for your question. Following a formal procurement process, a feasibility study to determine whether the creation of a council-owned housing company is a viable option has been undertaken. This is currently being assessed in keeping with the council's governance process. No final decision has been taken on whether the council will proceed with establishing the housing company.
Mr. Story, do you have the supplementary?
Apologies, Chairman. Councillor Cole, thank you very much for that answer. Could you just clarify that at the executive meeting you ruled out any social housing built by the council or direct investment in such? Is the housing company re-looking at that question, or is it aimed at a different sector of the housing market?
Thank you, Mr. Torrey. That's an interesting question. The housing company, if it was established, would do a mix of housing, not just social housing, because in order to fund the whole operation, we would have to have a mix of housing to enable us to provide social housing as part of the housing company.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Mr. Ruman, could you please invite Vaughan Miller into the chamber, please, by Zoom? He's not down as an attendee. Right, we'll move on. Could you invite Alison May, please, into the chamber by Zoom? Good evening, Mrs. May. Councillor Doherty, would you answer the question of Mrs. May, please?
Thank you for your question, Ms. May. I'm unsure why you think the West Berkshire Council continues to hemorrhage women. Since the 2019 election, no female councillor has resigned from the council. And if you're comparing 2015 to 2019, we only saw a 5% reduction in terms of female members, so not quite hemorrhaging. However, I can assure you that we are fully supportive of a truly democratic system, and we have introduced positive measures to support this. Some of those were outlined in my response to your question at the last executive on the 18th of November. And other examples include the introduction of a parental leave policy for elected members. That policy was approved following a motion I proposed in September 2019 and received cross-party support. Move to live streaming meetings and our steps to continue to enhance this has seen a major increase in the visibility of council's activities and a greater ability for our residents to engage in what we do and increase participation in local democracy. The council has adopted a code of conduct for councillors, which sets out the standards of conduct required by all members. This supports the promotion of respect and equality and prohibits discriminatory conduct. The council has already taken positive steps to positively support diversity amongst its members and will continue to keep this under review for further opportunities. It is crucial to us as a council and as a whole that we strive to increase participation in the political sphere with representations reflecting all of our community.
Mrs. May, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. First of all, I was expecting Councillor Law to respond to this because this was a governance question. With regard to your response in relation to councillors, when I say women councillors, this is also extended to the parish councils. And over here in Mortimer and Burfield,
thank you, Mrs. May.
We've lost a significant number of women councillors.
I'll stop you there. Your actual question was, what's positive steps will West Berkshire Council take in support of modern progressive governance structure?
Yes, and the agenda said that Councillor Law would respond to it.
I'm unsure.
So I do have a response, so if I could respond, I would appreciate that.
I can answer you.
Thank you. Since May 2019, there have existed numerous.
I'm unsure why you think that Councillor Law would answer your question. When questions are submitted, it comes down to the monitoring officer as to who's best to answer those questions. With regards to specific parish questions, I understand that you have resigned from a parish council. I'm not quite sure of the circumstances, and I'm unable to go into the particular details of something that actually isn't related to the original question. So I think that I've answered it in terms of the question that I've had before me this evening. So thank you, Ms. May.
Thank you for your question, Mrs. May. Mr. Ruman, could we invite in Paul Morgan into the chamber, please? Mr. Morgan, good evening, sir. Nice to see you. If you'd like to go to the lectern. And I will ask Councillor Wollaston's not with it, is he? Councillor Wollaston is, I'll ask Councillor Wollaston to answer that question. He's not in the chamber.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your question, Mr. Morgan. The Football Association and Foundation are not statutory consultees in the planning process, but their comments are taken into account by Sport England, who are. In a roundabout way, you are correct, in that Sport England require a further new grass pitch to replace existing grass pitch at the rugby club, which is now being used to create the sports hub to fully replace the old Faraday Road ground. WSBC has identified 2 possible pitches in the district, both owned by this council, and feasibility studies are being worked up on both, with a view to submitting a planning application by the spring, well within Sport England's 18-month timeframe. As I said, Sport England is the statutory consultee, and have clearly stated there is a strategic need for a fit for purpose AGP in this location. They will not be objecting to the sports hub application, but will object to any application to redevelop the former pitch until the new grass pitch is operational. WBC officers will continue to work with the Football Association and Football Foundation to develop the football programme at the Monk's Lane Sports Hub over the coming months. This administration considers that it has found the ideal solution for the provision of league football in West Berkshire, but we also continue to seek out other opportunities for both artificial and grass pitches, and several preliminary discussions are underway with officers in order to meet our commitments to the 10-year playing pitch strategy approved last year.
Mr. Morgan, do you have a supplementary question?
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you, Councillor Willison, for your full response there. Yeah, I have a supplementary, if that's okay. I've been at this for 6 years now, and my concern is that the members of this council, full council and members of the public aren't really aware of the full nature and the full costs associated with the scheme. If it was didn't meet the requirement for a replacement of Faraday Road, then that would be okay. But the full cost of it is huge. We're talking about £12 million here. So I would urge the members of the council and the members of the public to look under the bonnet of this before any firm decision is made, because it's going to cost a lot of money.
Mr. Morgan, this is a question of clarification, please.
Yeah,
come to your question, please.
My point is,
thank you.
Will the council agree to actually have a complete review of the costs and the mission statement of this scheme before any decision is made?
Thank you, Mr. Morgan, for your supplementary question. Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you again, Mr. Morgan. I don't know where you get your £12 million from, because it's certainly not a figure I recognise remotely. We are producing not just a single artificial grass pitch here, but a sports hub with major effect and improvement on what was previously at Faraday Road, and for the benefit of the whole of football within the West Berkshire area. And I think it's fair to say that the support of the Newbury Football Club is all that needs to be said about the need for this and the desire for it.
Mr. Morgan, thank you for your questions. And finally, Mr. Ruman, if you could invite Vaughan Miller into the chamber. Mr. Miller is not with us anywhere this evening.
Yeah, he's
Thank
still
you.
not with us.
That concludes then all of the questions from the public. We move on now then to item 7 on our agenda. The Leader of the Council has proposed a number of changes to committee membership in line with politically balanced arrangements. These are currently showing on the screen. Just wait for those to come up. Thank you. And I believe Councillor McKinnon, you wish to second these, is that right?
Yes, happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. I intend to take these changes on block for the vote, and I'm proposing to move straight to a formal vote in the chamber, given that these changes represent the given wishes of the group. Does anybody have any objections to that this evening? No, thank you very much. Then I'll ask the monitoring officer to conduct a vote in the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I am going to ask members to vote again by way of a show of hands until I'm advised that the issues with the microphones have been resolved. So can I ask everyone in favour of this proposal to raise their hands? Thank you, Chairman. I believe that has unanimous support and that is therefore carried.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. We now move on to items 8 to 15. Members, I'd like you to note the information in the summons relating to each of the committees listed in the agenda, items 8 to 15. I intend to take these on block, noting where those committees have or have not met. Everybody quite happy with that? Thank you. Then I will now move on to item 16 of the agenda. Item 16 of the agenda is our electric vehicle charge points programme. These are on pages 33 to 42 in your summons this evening. Can I invite Councillor Richard Sumner to formally move the recommendations on page 33 of the summons, and then I'll look for a second. Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. Happily to formally move.
Okay, thank you. It was very quick. I was expecting a little bit more than that, I must admit. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Walter, is that correct?
Correct, Chairman. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Sumner, would you like to present your report? Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. This report, and I will keep this brief, this report is to provide an update on the initiative to install electric vehicle.
Could you bring your microphone a little closer? We're having a bit closer to your mouth. Thank you.
I shall lean in, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This report is to provide an update on the initiative to install electric vehicle charge points in West Berkshire car parks and to recommend a charging strategy for their operation. Chairman, members, this paper supports the ongoing delivery of our environment strategy and continues the excellent track record to date regarding electric vehicle charging options. The council strategy specifically commits to expanding the electric vehicle charging network within West Berkshire, and the clarification of these fees and charges, I believe, is an absolutely necessary step in this process. We're now starting to consider the next phase of charge point installations and have received inquiries from interested parish councils about installing points in their area. This again will benefit those conversations as we move them forward. These will be considered as part of the phase 2 and as well as the remaining public car parks in the council's portfolio. We've got rapid chargers now being installed through various locations, and again, this is something that was initially highlighted as I think absent from our intent. More the case actually that it was a program of installation, and as I said, this is something that we continue to do, continue to review, and we will continue to work with partners across the district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ardagh Water, do you wish to speak now, or would you like to reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Then, members, I open this up to debate, and I'd like to invite Councillor Abbs to speak first.
Thank you very much. Well, first to say, I'm fully supportive of the right type of charging point in as many public places as possible. I'm not sure how we could achieve our aims otherwise, and until we have a valid hydrogen option coming forward, I don't think we've got much choice. Is to, in fact, go hybrid or BEVs to achieve our stated aim of net zero by 2030. So what's my problem with what's been put in front of us? It's really the cost. And we seem to be setting a price point at, let's say an average of 30p. There's a few numbers in there, but they're all around that price point. I happen to be a member of a parish council that's gone through the process of looking at or selecting vendors for the same type of thing, exactly the same as what we're talking about here. And two out the three, I can't give much commercially away because it's not been approved yet, but to give you a rough idea, we're asking 2x approximately what other people are asking. And rather than therefore this acting as an incentive for people to move and showing how, in fact, we are totally, pushing as hard as we can to achieve our stated aims, I think this is going to act as a bit of an anchor because it's a little bit expensive. But as I said, I'm fully supportive of the installation of charging points, how they are funded, where the money comes from, etc., a separate thing. Just trying to regain the money from basically charging a high pence per kilowatt hour isn't, in my mind, the right way to achieve it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also fully in favour of what it says in paragraph 5.1 of the report, that is seeking to increase the number of charge points, both private and public, West Berkshire. However, I was looking for some mention of on-street charge points in this motion, and I then realised that it's really only about setting charges, and that's why it comes to this council, because we have to approve, where we're setting charges. And of course, on-street charge charging of vehicles is not chargeable in terms of money by this council. But I would like to point out that if we're in a climate emergency, it sends the wrong signal to have, I think it's 36 charging points that are so very rarely used. This council contributed £25,000 to the installation. In addition, the public taxpayer spent another £75,000. The strong recommendation from the government at the time that it gave us that money was that we make them EV vehicle only parking spaces. There is still no sign on the ground, or even in terms of a traffic regulation order, that is going to happen. Now, I understand from officers that this is because we are short of the relevantly qualified officers, but I say again, it sends the wrong signal. I'm told that the priority, understandably, is being given by those officers in that department to immediate traffic safety issues. But what we seem to be saying to the public is that safety today compared with survival tomorrow is a choice. Well, it's not a choice. We need to do both, Chairman. And I would urge the portfolio holder to respond to this question of what are we going to do about on-street charging? It says in numerous documents I've seen that if we are going to encourage and stimulate this move to lower emission vehicles, we must show that we take it seriously. The Prime Minister says it's one of his main aims. What are we doing to support our own government's aims here? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Councillor Marsh.
Chairman, I'll be brief because Councillor Vickers has pretty much covered the point I wanted to make. But since we know that the on-street charging points are in the wrong place, and that people who want to use them can't get to them because people are parked in them, and this has been an issue ever since all those charging points were put in Westfields in Newbury. And I just do not understand why we can't do what we've been proposing for about 2 years now, which is make them dedicated for people, so you can only use it if you're charging an electric car, and that's how you will get the usage up. And I do think, although we welcome this and we don't really have a problem with the pricing structure that's been proposed, but I think 2.5 years, just over 2.5 years after declaring a climate emergency, for there not to be a single electric taxi in the whole of West Berkshire, or a place for an electric taxi to charge on a taxi rank. And I know we are making some progress now towards that, belatedly, but for that to be the case, and for so many of the existing charging points that have been put into being completely the wrong place, then while we're now getting half a dozen in car parks, that's great, but I do think it's doesn't really suggest a very dynamic approach to dealing with what we have agreed when we passed the resolution was an emergency. So please, can we have more of this, and can we speed up the programme to do this, to encourage more and more people to take up electric cars? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. I'm going to go to Councillor Brooks now. Just be patient.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't wish to add anything to what the previous three speakers have said. I support the thrust of their argument. Mine is more of a puzzle why this item cannot be subject to call-in. It won't be implemented until the next financial year. It's a matter of budget. What is the urgency, and why is it marked down that it could not be called in, please?
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I agree with previous speakers that it's very important to get as many charging points as we can installed to encourage the uptake of electric vehicles. The thing that disappoints me is that this report does not address the issue of parking charges. In Oxford, they don't charge overnight for electric vehicles, so they can go in and charge. And that would be very useful for those people who don't have off-street parking. Rather than queuing up for one of these spaces in the street that's been mentioned already, they could go into a car park and get their car charged overnight, but they'll be charged £2 for the privilege. So I when we come to look at this again, could I please ask that issue be looked at, please?
Thank you, Councillor Macro. Councillor Brooks, with regard to your comment on calling, the monitoring officer can address that now if you'd like. Thank you.
Sorry, just to clarify that the items that are approved by full council are not subject to call-in because it's full council that has approved the item.
Councillor Brooks.
Yes, I realise that would be the response, but it suggests then that we bring everything to council and nothing can be called in. So what is the basis on bringing things to council?
Matters that are reserved to council. So it's either reserved to council by law or within the agreed policy and budget framework that is approved by council each year in March. So
take it up
it's
outside the meeting, Chairman, but you can see the thrust of where I'm coming from.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. I have no more hand. I do have a hand up. Councillor Ardile-Water, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm certain that Councillor Sumner will come back on some of the points raised, if I may do as well, just to share the load, as it were. So, firstly, Councillor Abbs, you did address the question of costs, and yes, charging points are expensive. It is worth remembering, and indeed, I think one of the other members also raised indirectly this point, that firstly the cost of owning an electric vehicle at present is very expensive. There are very few, albeit which is great news, a significantly rising number of electric vehicles in this district. And so, firstly, the cost per hour or per kilowatt of charging is not a significant consideration if you are going to be buying an electric car, unless you have an on-street only charging facility. In other words, this paper is around charges in council properties. And if you are a resident or indeed a visitor from outside this district, you will sensibly have almost certainly charge your vehicle at home at a vastly lower price. This is a as needed cost, which again is not a significant item on top of the decision whether to buy an electric vehicle. There've been a lot of mentions, both here and at previous meetings, around on-street parking and allocation of precious space, which, regardless of cash, cannot be replaced. It is worth noting not only that, again, hardly any residents in any street currently have electric vehicles. These will grow, but right now there are very few. Also, of course, space it's a finite resource. If a space is set aside for an electric car, another resident cannot do that. We will be addressing these issues in the coming months and years. More will be announced. But suffice it to say that this is a long-term programme. What we're announcing today is the immediate enabler for charging to enable visitors to the district and people who have not charged their cars enough to do so in a public car park. Over the coming months and years, a rolling programme will progressively increase the number of places for it. In summary, I'm confident that we are doing what we should to encourage electric vehicle take-up. The market and prices of cars will be the major determinant, and absolutely we'll be doing more in months to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ardile-Water. Councillor Abbs, I see you've got your hand up. You have already spoken.
For a point of information, Chairman. Thank you. Really, it's to do that. You know, all new electric vehicles are expensive, but that, of course, is quite an emerging second-hand market where it's not as expensive. So the statement is just
sorry. A point of order.
I said point of information.
Well, there isn't. There are only two circumstances in which further statements can be made, and it's to raise either a point of order or a matter of personal explanation.
So, monitoring of you're happy for just incorrect information to be shared with the public and the rest of the members. Then I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. We are in the closing part of the debate, so now I invite Councillor Sumner. Do you wish to summarise, Councillor?
Thank you, Chairman. There isn't actually a lot I can add to the last statement from my colleague. In all honesty, he's covered it all very, very nicely. Two statements about parking locations. I understand the conversation, but that's not what this paper is about. So whilst I'm happy to note them, and we will continue to have those conversations as we have been doing, it really isn't relevant to this paper. The recommendations set out in point 2 recommend that the council adopts the fees and charges in 2021-22 for its public charge points, and then for that to be continued in following years. I think what we are doing is to enable charge points which members and members of the public will have seen installed in car parks to be turned on rather than to be sitting there. And that's an important step forward. Nothing more than that. It's a step forward. It needs to happen. Chairman, I'm grateful for the conversation and for the comments that have been made. And I am happy to propose the recommendations as detailed in item 2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Members, I now ask the monitoring officer to conduct an indicative vote by way of a show of hands via Zoom. Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I will now ask all members who are in favour of this proposal to raise their hands, their Zoom hands, and I will then count. You, Chairman, there are in excess of 20 hands raised. Can I ask for any members who are opposed to that motion? So if all members, take down their Zoom hands. And anyone who is opposed to the motion, can I ask them to raise their hands? There are no hands raised in opposition to that. And if any members wish to formally abstain, if I could ask them to raise their hands. Thank you. I have a number further coming on. So there are approximately 10. So that would have, on the indicative vote, been carried. And if we can now move to a formal vote. Thank you, members. If I can ask you to lower your Zoom hands. Thank you. So if we now move to a formal vote in the chamber, I have been advised that the technology should be working. So I'm going to invite members to again try to use the touchscreen on their microphones, which should enable us to have a vote in the chamber. Thank you.
Not working, Chairman. Yeah. Oh, the screen, right. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Is it not? Oh, it's Jeff's work. Okay. Councillor Pattenden's, is yours? Okay. Okay. So yes, thank you. I can see that all members in the chamber have now voted, and I can confirm, as indicated, that motion has been carried, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. If you could all put your hands down, please, your virtual hands. We'll start with a clean sheet. Councillor Mays, Vickers and Brooks, your hands are up on the Zoom. Councillor Mays and Martha Vickers. Thank you. Members, we now move on to item 17 of the agenda. This is the adoption of the Statement of Licensing Policy Principles under Section 349 of the Gambling Act. I am aware that this report has already received a full debate at Licensing Committee. Can I invite Councillor Hilary Cole, please, to formally move the recommendations on page 43?
Thank you, Chairman, and I formally move the recommendations on page 43 of the agenda.
Thank you. And I believe the seconder is Councillor Rick Jones, is that correct? Thank you. Councillor Cole, could you please present the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The council's required under Section 349 of the Gambling Act 2005 to set out the principles it proposes to apply when exercising its functions under this legislation. The purpose of the statement is to set out how licensing will be administered in the district and seeks to ensure that an appropriate balance is drawn between the interests of those wishing to provide and take part in legal gambling and those who might be affected by it. The statement has to be published at least every 3 years, and a revised version needs to be published by the end of January 2022. Officers have therefore undertaken a review which resulted in a number of minor changes being proposed to the statement. A section on small society lotteries was included and additional information was added to ensure that it complied with the current legislation, reflected updated guidance published by the Gambling Commission, and that it was easier to understand. The draft was discussed at the June 2021 Licensing Committee, where some additional formatting changes were suggested. In accordance with the legislation, the statement was then the subject of an extensive 12-week consultation. The methodology and those consulted are set out in paragraphs 6.4 and 6.5 on page 49 of the report. 3 responses were received. 2 of these respondents stated that they did not wish to raise any objections. Public Health and Wellbeing did raise some concerns about the cumulative impact of licensing and the impact on mental health and deprivation. Currently, the protection of public health is not one of the functions that can be addressed under the Gambling Act, and therefore these comments could not be reflected in the statement. They are, of course, important issues, and officers will seek to address these issues operationally. The Licensing Committee has considered the outcome of the consultation and have recommended that the Council objects the revised strategy. I therefore commend this report to Council and move the adoption of the recommendations as set out in 2.1 points A, B and C on page 43 of the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Jones, do you wish to speak now, or would you like to reserve your rights?
I'll reserve my right, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I open this up to the chamber for debate. Councillor Abbs.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Really, for everybody to know, I specifically asked at the licensing meeting that when this report was to come before us, that we in fact do not allow any changes, because a lot of time and effort, as Councillor Cole has just revealed, has gone into making it what it is today. The members decided that no, they wanted to leave some flexibility to make changes. So I further asked that, well, if there are any changes, could it be made very clear what those changes are? Because otherwise I've got to sit there with one piece of documentation compared with another piece of documentation and try and figure out what changed. I am going to assume, because I can't find any, either it's been ignored or there are no changes. Could the portfolio holder confirm that, please?
Thank you. I have no more hands up. That concludes the debate. Can I ensure there's been no telephone calls come in on this one? No telephone calls. Okay, so close and order debate. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor, as far as I'm aware, there have been no changes since we debated that at licensing. And we did say at that time that if there were any major changes, then they would certainly be brought back to the committee or to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Cole, do you need to respond?
No, Chairman, I think I did point out in my opening statement that there were some minor changes, and I defer really to Councillor Jones, because he's the chairman of the licensing committee and is far more aware of what was discussed at that meeting than I was. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I'll now ask our monitoring officer to conduct an indicative vote by way of show of hands via Zoom. Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please ask all members who are in
Has someone got their microphone turned up somewhere on their laptops?
Okay. Sorry, thank you, members. I can see that members are raising their hands in favour of the proposal to accept the recommendation on this item. Thank you. I think that there are now in excess of 30 hands raised in favour of that. Are there any, if I can ask those members who've raised their Zoom hands to now lower them? And do any members wish to oppose that proposal? If I could ask them to raise their Zoom hands now. I can see no Zoom. Councillor Brooks, is that an old a legacy hand? Thank you. So thank you, Chairman. I can confirm on the indicative vote that the proposal would have been carried, and I will now ask members in the chamber, invite members in the chamber to move to the formal vote using the microphone technology and to cast their votes. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I believe that is now all members have cast their votes and that is unanimously approved.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. Councillor, we now move on to item 18 of the agenda. This is the external audit appointment process for financial years 2023-24, 2027-28. Can I invite Councillor McKinnon to formally move the recommendations on page 95 of the summons?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I propose the recommendations as set out in section 2.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. And I believe the seconder for this is Councillor Tony Linden. Am I correct?
Yes, Chairman, I reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKinnon, can you please introduce the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, so it's recommended that the Council opts in to the public sector audit appointments, sector-wide procurement for the appointment of external auditors for the 5 financial years beginning on the 1st of April 2023. This is a continuation of the Council's current policy arrangements, whereby PSAA manage the procurement and selection of external auditors on behalf of the Council and other eligible bodies. This arrangement has the benefit of reducing procurement and management costs to the Council and keeping the overall audit fee as low as possible. If the Council was to undertake a procurement on its own, we would run the risk of lack of interest from audit firms of the scale large enough to undertake the assignment as a fee acceptable to the Council, as well as the considerable cost and effort involved in running the procurement itself. The same drawbacks would apply to a more small-scale collaboration with a handful of neighbouring authorities. It's in our residents' interests to have the Council's financial statements, internal controls and value for money performance audited by a rigorous and independent firm of auditors carried out for a reasonable fee. The proposed arrangement is the most effective method of achieving this goal. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Linden, do you wish to speak now or are you going to reserve your right?
I'll speak now, Chairman.
You're going to speak now. Thank you.
As this was discussed at Governance and Ethics, and we fully recommended the recommendation, it was also dealt with on the other authority, which I'm a member of as Vice Chairman of Audit and Governance on the Royal Berkshire Fire Authority, where I was chairing the meeting. We've had a few problems with audits, and it is important that we do so in strength. And that is one of the reasons why we are part of the suggestion and proposal to Council, is that we agree to this arrangements, and it's the best thing for us to do. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lyndon. Members, I open this up to the chamber for debate. I've no interest on this, therefore I'll take this straight to. Well, I know you're keeping an eye on me, Councillor Brooks. Councillor McKinnon, if you'd like to formally close the debate.
Thank you. Well, I've got no points to address, so happy that everyone seems to be in support of this. So nothing further to add to my opening statement, Chairman. Propose that the recommendations in section 2 are adopted.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. I'll now ask our monitoring officer to conduct the
Thank you. So if I could ask all members who are in favour of this proposal to raise their Zoom hands initially. Thank you, Chairman. I can see that there is in excess of 30. I don't intend to count them all. I will, however, for completeness, ask members to lower their Zoom hands and to ask if anybody wishes their opposition to this motion to be noted. Sorry, there are a number of members still with their hands raised. I will wait for those to be lowered. Okay. Are there any members wishing to oppose this? Thank you. I can see no hands.
Councillor Vickers has got a hand up.
I think that was a legacy hand, so I was trying to move the matter on. If I can ask members in the chamber to again use their microphones in order to vote formally on this motion. Thank you, Chairman. I can see all members in the chamber have now cast their vote and that is unanimously approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. We now move on to item 19 of the agenda. This is the Compton Neighbourhood Development Plan. Can I invite Councillor Richard Sumner to formally move the recommendations on page 105 of your summons this evening? Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just confirm the minor amendment and whether you are taking that initially?
So I think it is acceptable for you to propose that the additional sentence be included as a minor amendment. If the seconder is prepared to agree to that, and then nobody within the chamber objects or no members of council object, otherwise it will have to be formally moved later in the debate as a formal amendment. But I think it is acceptable as a minor alteration in the form that it's been presented.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to formally move the recommendation on page 105, section 2 for the Compton Neighbourhood Development Plan. And thank you for clarifying that. This is with the minor amendment to delegate to the Service Director, Development and Regulation in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning and transport and countryside, the authority to make minor alterations and corrections to the Compton Neighbourhood Development Plan prior to its proceeding to referendum.
Thank you. I don't have a seconder for this. Do I have a seconder at this stage?
We need, I think, Councillor.
Chairman, I'm happy to support the minor amendment as well as the main motion. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Culver, for doing so. The Compton Neighbourhood Development Plan has been subject to independent examination and subject to some minor modification has been recommended, I'm happy to say, for referendum. This report provides the evidence for the council to make that decision. Important to note, as I'm sure members have read, that the examiner's report is not binding and West Berkshire District Council must determine if the Compton Neighbourhood Development Plan, as modified, meets the basic conditions, is compatible with the convention rights, complies with the definition of an NDP and the provisions that can be made by the NDP. As I said, West Berkshire Council must also determine if the plan should proceed to referendum. I'm grateful to everyone that's played a part in getting this plan to this stage, and look forward to council approval this evening for the next stage, to go for referendum and pending a positive response to be adopted. Since 2017, Compton Parish Council, alongside its residents, have been working on the NDP, a formal planning document that allows local communities to shape the future of the areas in which they live. They include policies for development and the use of land. I'm also grateful to Councillor Culver for agreeing to second the report and note with the level of engagement that she has had to date. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. I now invite this open to debate. Just get my Councillor Bridgman.
Chairman, could I just welcome Compton to the neighbourhood plan fold from the existing neighbourhood plan parish?
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I echo what Councillor Bridgman has said. I'm delighted to see this neighbourhood plan come forward, and I know it's been an awful lot of work, and I don't think we should underestimate the commitment that local residents put into the production of the neighbourhood plan, and I think it's been really worthwhile, and I'm delighted that Compton is the second community that has developed a neighbourhood plan. And again, I would also like to say thank you to Councillor Culver, because she's been a great supporter of this and a real leading light in the production of it. So well done, Compton. I'm delighted. Thank you.
I'd like to add my appreciation of Councillor Culver as well from the chair, the work that she's done on that neighbourhood plan. Councillor Vickers, thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. I felt as the opposition spokesperson on planning, I should say something. And really what I want to say is that as a party, we thoroughly support neighbourhood development plans. I suppose I should slightly declare an interest in that Newbury has just launched its own, and its first steering group meeting will take place later this month. I'm not opted to be on that because I feel that there is actually a conflict of interest between parish and town councils and district councils. Among shouldn't really be, for the sake of transparency on both. But I think whatever one fears might happen or hopes might happen with the forthcoming planning reforms, I just hope that the government will continue to give its fulsome support to this, move towards localism. And I think we would all agree with that. But certainly this party strongly agrees with neighbourhood development plans. And congratulations to Compton.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Mr. Rumans, no telephone calls. Everybody's quite happy. Good. Then straight to, I think, Councillor Sumner, isn't it? Oh, Councillor Culver. I do apologise.
That's all right. Thank you, Chairman.
If you could put your Zoom hand up, Councillor Drummond. But thank you to Mrs. Clark for bringing you to my attention. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Sumner, for proposing this, and thank you, members of the council, for offering your thanks as well. I'm really, really proud of the people of Compton for the hard work that they've done on this. Not only the parish council, but also the steering group and all of the various working groups as well that looked at individual issues like housing and the environment and so on. If I may, I want to share with you some comments of thanks from the parish council itself as well. Councillor David Oldest, the chairman of parish council over there, he said that he would like to offer particular thanks to Debbie Smith and Sue Garmansway, who both acted as secretary during the process. He would also like to thank Aaron and Holly at Fowler Architecture and Planning for their excellent support and guidance throughout the process. And he would finally like to thank Brian Little and Layla Bassett from the council for all of their help. And I would like to echo those comments of thanks from David to our officers and also to the people of Compton. It's taken 4 years to fulfil this exercise. It's a lot of work. There's been a lot of consultation with the public, and I think it's a truly democratic exercise and should be celebrated as such. The independent inspector praised the report that was produced, saying it was comprehensive, professionally presented and informative. And I think there are a few key things to note. We've got the Compton Institute application coming to Western Area Planning in a couple of weeks' time. It's already in the local plan as a development of 140 homes. And now the developer has said they'd like to build up to 165 homes. That's a very big increase in the size of Compton. So obviously of great significance to the people there. It's likely to have an impact on the infrastructure. There's the issue of pollution in the ground because it was an animal health institute. So it's good that we've now got this neighbourhood development plan, and that will be able to be considered as part of our planning process. They also want to maintain a hostel on the site, which has got 1 and 2 bed apartments. And as we know, we've got a target as a council to have more smaller properties, which we often miss. So I think I support the people of Compton that hostel should be maintained and renovated so that we can meet the need of people who want smaller housing. It also means we'll get more SIL payments for the parish, which is fantastic, always to be welcomed. And also the plan looks at things like affordable housing, and we do need that. Also, in terms of carbon footprint, the plan clearly says that they support the objectives of this council in becoming carbon neutral by 2030. It talks about low carbon building materials, energy efficient design, improvements in carbon targets with relation to level 4 of the Code for Sustainable Homes and so on. So all things to be welcomed. It also talks about district heating. And says that the Pirbright Institute site would be big enough to fulfil that. So that might include things like hot water heating pump sources. We understand that the provisional date for the referendum is the 10th of February. So we very much look forward to that and hope that it will pass and it will become part of our considerations when looking at planning in that area in the future. So again, my thanks to everybody in the parish and also in this council for their support of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. Councillor Sumner, in summary.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everybody, for the support this evening. Very grateful for that. Look forward to a positive referendum outcome. And Chairman, I'm happy to propose the recommendations detailed in item 2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Before carry out the vote, I'd like to make it clear that the vote to be taken is on the amended recommendation as proposed by Councillor Sumner. I'll now ask the monitoring officer to conduct the indicative vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please ask all members to now raise their Zoom hands if they are in favour of the proposal? Thank you, Chairman. That there are, again, in excess, and I suspect it's fairly collective, but there are in excess of 30 members supporting that recommendation. Can I please ask members to lower their Zoom hands? Thank you. And again, for completeness, if there are any members who wish to have their opposition to this proposal formally noted. Thank you. So I can see no hands in opposition. So the indicative vote would indicate that that recommendation would be approved. And if I can now ask members in the council chamber to move to the formal vote by again using the microphone technology. I think, Chairman, that there appears to be one vote left to cast, but that is clearly approved. There we have now all members within the room have approved that. So that is again approved unanimously. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. And may I give my congratulations, Councillor Sumner, Councillor Culver, and to the Parish Council of Compton. A lot of work goes into a plan like that. We now move on to item 20, updates on the Constitution. I'm aware that this report has already received a full debate at the Constitution Review Task Group and the Governance and Ethics Committee. Can I invite Councillor Doherty to formally move the recommendations? And this is on page 231 of your summons.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to move the recommendations laid out in section 2 of page 231 of your pack.
Thank you very much. And I understand, Councillor Marino, you're to second this, am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty, would you like to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Those observant amongst you will realise that this is actually Councillor Wollaston's report, so I'm actually going to hand over to him in a moment to talk a little bit more fully about the report. Before I do so, I just wanted to add to thank the task group for the work that they've undertaken so far. I realise, looking through the report, that there's a lot of work ahead, but it's good to see that they've actually tackled some of the issues that have caused some concern here previously. So I'm very happy to support this report tonight, but I'm going to hand over to Councillor Wollaston, whose actual report it is.
Councillor Wollaston.
Sorry, Chairman, can we just check that the Secretary is going to reserve his rights formally rather before we go to Councillor Wollaston?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you to reserve your rights, Councillor Marino?
Yeah, I'll reserve my rights. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. This relates back to the budget meeting we had last year and the need to ensure this does not repeat again. This proposal is a short-term proposal for the new budget year, or new municipal year, I should say. And it will be incorporated within the revision of the Constitution, which the Constitutional Working Party is now continues to work on. I commend it and hope that there'll be unanimous support.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. I'll now open this up to debate. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. And I thank the Constitution Review Task Group because this is a step in the right direction. We will certainly be supporting it this side of the chamber. And we fought quite hard, Chairman, to get you the latitude to chair the meeting, the budget meeting. And I look forward to you doing that with some aplomb and keeping us on the straight and narrow. There was a proposal to actually limit debate. We didn't think that was necessary, and it came up with silly numbers like 6 minutes to the Greens and 17 minutes to us on the main budget, which didn't really seem practical. So very pleased with the outcome, really, and we'll be supporting it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers. Martha.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I see that included in the recommendations is the suggestion that we test out hosting theme debates, and this is something that I put forward in a question to council some months ago, and I'm pleased to see it here. I hope that this will involve inviting members of the public, and particularly young members from our local secondary schools, to come and take part in debates within the council chamber to help them to see how the council is run and maybe inspire them to be future councillors. So maybe that could be clarified, but I look forward to it being included in here, whatever form it takes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Councillor Marsh.
Two comments from us, really, on the proposed running of the budget after the sham wasn't the last couple of years. I mean, I do feel this is a good step forward. It was.
Chairman, could Councillor Marsh switch his microphone on? Apologies for interrupting.
It is on, Chair.
If you could just move it a little closer. We're having a bit of trouble with mics and picking up tonight.
We were astonished when we attended our first budget meeting. Is that better? That you could put forward all these amendments and everything was voted for on block, which might have been the way the council used to operate, but doesn't seem a good way for it to be operating now. So this is definitely a step forward. And on the theme debates, how shall I put this? When I talk to people in my ward, people more generally, they're astonished at the sheer number of important issues that are never considered by the council. And they say to me, well, how did the vote go on whatever it might be, the football ground or town centre traffic or the new sports hub? And I said, oh, well, we haven't debated that. Well, when are you going to debate it? Well, I don't think we are, because we just get to ask questions of the executive. And that's not a very democratic way to proceed. So I do think that there is a democratic deficit at the heart of this council. And I hope that in a modest way to start with, these theme debates can start to address this. But ultimately, what we would like to see is a democratic council where councillors representing their constituents debate the issues, make the decisions, and actually aren't just sitting there sticking their hands up for whatever their party tells them to, or asking questions of the executive that tend to get fobbed off. So we welcome this, and we'd like to see a lot more debating and a lot more decision making being taken by councillors, and not 9 councillors who happen to be handpicked for the executive of the day, of whichever party, incidentally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. As the chairman of the task group, I thought I should say something, and I reject the argument that Councillor Marsh has just put forward. We operate a democratic process. It is a democratic process of executive government of the council, and that is the system we have, and that is the system we follow. So far as theme debates are concerned, I would simply say that I doubt, we will obviously take advice from the monitoring officer on this, but I doubt that we are in a position to allow members of the public to enter a council debate. Now, that is not to say that I wouldn't welcome having or organising debates amongst our youth, young people, school and college students. I see that as absolutely part of what we should be doing, but I don't think that is what the nature of themed debates in council is to be. But as I say, I look for advice as we go forward. I simply say generally that a lot of debate has gone on already to get to this point. I hear what Councillor Brooks says about the alternative proposal that was put to Governance and Ethics. I think it was a perfectly valid proposal. It was to allocate time in relation to debate on the various items of the budget, and there are, as you see from the report, 4 principal items for that budget debate in accordance with political representation. And I think that is entirely democratic, but it fully open to Governance and Ethics Committee to choose out of the options that were presented to it, the option that's been chosen is before you. I simply say that I don't think it was a ridiculous concept. It was a concept that was debated and is not before you. And I hope that you'll accept that a serious amount of work has gone into to get to this point. And I certainly would seek the endorsement of council for what is proposed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Councillor Cole, James.
Thank you, Chairman. I too was on the task group, still am. It's quite interesting listening to Councillor Marsh. I guess he really wants to go back 30 or 40 years to the previous way of doing things. Back, for example, in my father's time. We've moved on. I'm sorry, we're just not there anymore. I see this proposal as an eminently sensible compromise. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add on the point around theme debates. I'm on the Thames Valley Police and Crime panel as the local authority representative, and we often have theme debates. And I would say that actually subject to what the monitoring officer has to comment on that, and obviously the time allowing, because I noted it's only theme debates for 1 hour, that we should perhaps consider outside bodies or people contributing towards the debate, because on the Thames Valley Police and Crime panel, it does add and enrich the debate. So I would welcome us looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. I can see no more hands up, so I'm going to go to the closing order. Do you want me to come back now? Yes.
Sorry, Chairman. Just in response to the queries that have been raised around themed debates, the proposal as it currently stands is that the debates would take place limited to members of council, But I think as the report has made clear, this is an interim report, and actually the kind of larger proposals will be coming forward. So I think certainly the messages from members have been noted, and we can take that back to the task group to look at other options in terms of whether there are broader debating opportunities for us to take forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark, for that clarification. Mr. Rubens, any telephone calls come in? No, we're all quite clear. Then I will now go to the closing of the debate. Councillor Marino.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to keep it very brief, as the Chair of Governance and Ethics, I just want to echo the comments about the work undertaken by the task group. My colleagues have summed everything up pretty well, so I'll keep it short there, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Doherty, just to close up.
Thank you, everybody. You're right. The opposite members of the room are right. Last budget meeting was a shambles, and it was silly to see members walk out and have a deficit of their democratic duty to sit through a debate. Was a shambles and was silly. What I would say is there was a conversation around Councillor Marsh was saying around the demographic deficit, and I actually disagree with that as well. You won't be surprised to hear me say we in West Berkshire Council, like the majority of local authorities up and down the country, recognise that a committee system can be slow and cumbersome, and we've adopted a cabinet system in order to make those decisions that are here. If you don't want to take my word for it, what I would recommend you to do is to read the recent governance review of Wirral Council, where they've been having some particular difficulties since they went to the committee system. In fact, I'll read you a quote from it just so you can take it away and have a thought around the type of system that they're operating. The weakness in a committee system is its financial grip, and the cumbersome nature of the committee systems are not helping to achieve the momentum required. Most local authorities long ago realised that and changed the system that we've adopted here in West Berkshire. And I think looking at the results we obtain here do very well for our residents. So I have got no issue whatsoever with supporting the recommendations and asking that they're put to the vote this evening, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Doherty. I now ask Monitoring Officer Mrs. Clark if she would conduct the indicative vote on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. So I will again ask all members to indicate their support for the proposal that we adopt the recommendations in the reports by raising their Zoom hand. Thank you, Chairman. Again, there are in excess of 30 members with their hands raised. If I could ask all members to lower their Zoom hands now. And I'm going to ask if there are any members opposed to the proposal. Thank you, Chairman. I can see no Zoom hands raised in opposition, which would indicate that the indicative vote would support the proposal. So if I can now ask all members in the chamber to now take part in the formal vote by using their Zoom microphones. Thank you, Chairman. That has received unanimous support across the chamber, and that recommendation is therefore approved.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. And finally, we move on to item 21. This is the West Berkshire Council timetable of public meetings. Members, can I just ask that you ensure you are considering the updated version of this timetable at Appendix A. This was circulated by email on the 26th of November. It's also the version currently available on the Council's website and in the Modern Gov app. Councillor Doherty, could I invite you please to move the motion? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to move the motion for the West Berkshire Council timetable of public meetings with a minor alteration as allowed in Rule 4.13.9 of the Constitution. And that's just to confirm the dates for OSMC will be clarified by the Service Director for Strategy and Governance in consultation with the Chairman of OSMC and the Leader of the Council prior to publication of this timetable.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. Can I ask for a seconder on this? I don't have a name currently.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Thank you. Do you accept that minor alteration, Councillor Jones?
I do, Chairman.
Thank you. Then I tend to take the recommendation as amended unless anyone wishes to object. Anybody object? No, thank you. Councillor Doherty, will you please introduce the report?
The report doesn't actually need much introduction. It's a timetable of our meetings for the forthcoming municipal year. It's laid out before you. It takes an awful lot of work and effort from the officers because it is rather like a jigsaw. So I'd like to thank all of those officers that have been involved with that.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, do you wish to speak now or reserve your rights? Thank you. Open it up for debate. Just get my... Thank you. I've dropped out. Thank you. Councillor Linden.
Yes, Chairman, I was doing my diary, looking at it, and I'm referring to March 2023. We've got the Health Scrutiny Committee / District Planning Committee on the 8th of March, and we've got Health Scrutiny Committee again on the 14th of March. I think that might be a typo error.
Thank you, Councillor Linden. Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I've been instrumental in trying to get the timetable reorganised because we've had some clashes this current municipal year. There is still a problem in March next year, not apart from those that Councillor Linden just indicated, and that's caused by PERDA. Sadly, that would mean we have a month where we have 2 council meetings and an exec, but otherwise we're trying to keep them as far apart as possible. We're then going to try and work in the other meetings, which are not public meetings, so there's not too many clashes and we ease the burden on all members.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Marina.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just very quickly, I've noticed on page 251 at the bottom where it mentions governance and ethics meeting at 5 p.m. Since I took over as the chair, we've actually been meeting at 6:30, so I'd like that amended.
Thank you for pointing that will be amended.
Thank you.
Councillor Doherty. Thank you. Councillor Law.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to thank the monitoring officer for allowing the amendment when we discovered that the plan to schedule OSMC meetings a couple of weeks before the relevant executive meetings discussing KPIs and discussing quarterly performance hadn't been implemented in the way that we had all agreed to implement. For those members who were probably wondering just what this is all about, we, OSMC and the leader, the executive members, agreed that the way we currently handle reviews, particularly of the quarterly performance figures, was they come to executive and then they come to OSMC, and we felt that everyone agreed it was probably better from a scrutiny point of view if they came to OSMC first, and that is what's been agreed. Unfortunately, the draft and the timetable schedule in front of you tonight did not allow for that. And I'm grateful to the monitoring officer for allowing myself and the leader to get together to reorganize those dates. And I believe the new schedule will be distributed shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No more hands up. No telephone calls, Mr. Ehrman? No. Then I will ask Councillor Jones just to make your contribution.
Mr. Chairman, point of order from Councillor Bridgman.
Yes.
Chairman, I just want to clarify with the monitoring officer, given that there have been some comments on, for example, times of meeting, dates of meeting, so health scrutiny and governance and ethics, whether we need to move, given that this is a timetable that will be published on the say-so of council, whether we need to formally move some amendments to get those in to accept those changes.
I think the proposal is that council delegate in effect to myself as monitoring officer to make those amendments in consultation with the relevant chairman. And given that this needs to be approved today, it was felt that would enable that to take place in an efficient manner.
Does that answer your question?
That certainly does. And if that's what we're voting on, I'm very happy to vote on that basis. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for pointing that out. Back to Councillor Jones.
Yes, I think with the changes that have been mentioned and the monitoring officer's comments, I think there's no more to say. Chairman, just move that we approve the timetable.
Thank you.
with those comments.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendations as to in 2.1 with the minor alterations as per our agreements with the monitoring officer.
So I think we're clear. So yeah. No, I think. Yeah, I can say. Sorry, just for clarification, that the chairman is just asking that to ensure that everyone is clear that the vote, the proposal is as amended, so that in effect I will have delegated power in consultation with the relevant chairman and the leader of council to make some minor amendments to the dates on the published schedule. So thank you.
I just want to make that clear.
So if I can now ask all members to raise their Zoom hand if they are in favour of the proposal that has been moved. Thank you, Chairman. There are, again, certainly in excess of 30 hands in favour. So if I can ask all members to lower their Zoom hands now. And if I could ask if any members wish to raise their hand in opposition to this proposal. So there is nobody indicating opposition to this proposal. So the indicative vote would indicate that the recommendation would be approved. If I can now ask members in the chamber to use their microphones to conduct the formal vote. Thank you, Chairman. So that proposal is again unanimously approved and carried. Thank you.
Mrs. Clark. Members, I am conscious.
Sorry, could I just make a point? Just on the point about the location of the meetings, should we not also make reference to whether they're virtual or any changing circumstances with COVID, etc.? That was just a point not affecting the vote, but I just wanted to make that. Thank you.
Mrs. Clark. Any response on that?
No, I think Councillor Rolls has just asked for us to ensure that any published timetable makes clear where those meetings will take place and if it's virtually. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Members, I'm conscious of the time, but I'm pleased to say we are running slightly a bit quicker than I thought we might, which I'm very pleased about. And thank you very much for everybody's contribution. Therefore, I'm very pleased to offer you, if you'd like it, the comfort break just for 5 minutes. Please, just 5 minutes. We've been going 2 hours, so I think it's we all deserve a comfort break just for 5 minutes. Mrs. Clark, if you could just gauge your eye over the chamber, I think we are all reassured. Councillor Brooks.
Just for the avoidance of doubt, Chairman, could you perhaps tell us the order you're going to take the motions?
I will
in?
indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. All comfortable? Good. Well, we'll move on to item 22. And members, I'd like to bring your attention really to the finite time available to us to discuss these motions. We do have 8. I'd like to ask you to consider that the longer we spend on each motion, the more likely it will be that we don't actually consider them all. Please could I therefore ask members to be succinct and as possible during your speeches, and if you can, avoid repetition. The motions are set out on pages 253 in the summons. Given the time constraints on the remainder of this evening, I have just mentioned on the number of motions that have been submitted to council. I intend to reorder them by putting what I consider to be the priority items for discussion first and second, and then ordering the rest to be the rest by date that the motion was received. Any motions left to be considered when the meeting comes to an end can be deferred to the next meeting of council, of which motions can be considered considered unless the proposer chooses to withdraw them. So the order that I would like to take these motions in is first the return to fully democratic process. This was to be with Councillor Lee Dillon. This is now with Councillor Owen. Thank you for that clarification. The second will be the civility in public life. This is Councillor Claire Rolls. The third, the integrity of West Berkshire Council. That's with Councillor Brooks. I'm giving you time to write these down. Are we all keeping up? Good. Fourth will be T levels. That's Councillor Dominic Burke. Fifth will be the West Berkshire Council pensions divestment from fossil fuels. That will be Councillor Adrian Abbs. 6, the response to COP26 in Glasgow, Councillor Caroline Culver. 7th, the environmental standards of Chestnut Walk development, Councillor Cole. And 8th, helping West Berkshire taxi trade go greener, Councillor Adrian Abbs. I have given leaders an idea as to what I intend and decided tonight because of the number of motions that we've got. The last 3 will not be for debate. 6, 7 and 8. So we have 5 motions to discuss tonight. So if we look at that, 5 people on each, 5 5s are 25. We're looking at 2.5 hours, so we're not going to get out here till 11. So hence my suggestion that we are succinct and we do not have too much repetition. So the first one is...
Chairman, apologies. Can I just ask a quick question, please? Yes. Bearing in mind that the first 5 might take quite a long time and we won't get onto the ones that are going to be delegated to other meetings, will those final ones be delegated to final readings, or will we say, well, we haven't had time to look at them at all tonight, so they'll have to go to the next council? The reason I ask is because the COP26 one, if we have to wait until the March council before I can even get it delegated, we'll be closer to COP27.
I have the same problem with items 1 and 2. Item 1 in particular is dependent on going to council in March. So, that was the reason. It's not an easy job when the monitoring officer, myself and the vice chairman, we get confronted with the agenda at the same time as you do. And a decision has to be made. Now, as I say, I'm very encouraged tonight that we've moved the business along quite quickly. So Councillor Brooks is saying, get on with it. Let's chat. So let's get on and we'll do this one. This is return to the fully democratic process. This is motion F in your pack. Councillor Dillon, as I say, was going to do this. Is now Councillor Owen. Could you move the motion, Councillor? Thank you.
Thank you. I do move the motion. Do you wish to speak to it now?
Thank you. I believe the motion is being seconded by Councillor Jeff Brooks. Am I right? Thank you very much. Council will debate this motion this evening to order to facilitate the discharge of business in accordance with the procedure rule 4.9.8. Can I ask Councillor Jeffrey, please, to speak to the motion? Councillor Jeffrey, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And you have 5 minutes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. I'm very sorry that Councillor Lee Dillon is not able to propose his motion tonight. He's not well. But Mr. Chairman, I'm very pleased to assure you and all members that I very fully support it, and I hope that every one of us in this chamber will support it too. During the height of COVID and running really through till the early summer of this year, the government put in place understandable and sensible special arrangements to permit councils to conduct business via electronic means. But the government also took a deliberate stance that when this emergency procedure ended, it ended. Most of us welcomed the return to near normality until we discovered that officers of the council had found a way to trim back councillor control. Apparently, this council chamber did not have sufficient space to accommodate all members safely in a COVID-free environment, and a temporary arrangement for that one meeting was put in place whereby council political groups would have a proportion of their members in the chamber and voting. Others would be at home and unable to vote. As an emergency measure for one meeting, I, for one, accepted it without demur. We then found that this was a very convenient leg to get up and begin to become a process of its own. And for more than half a year, full council meetings, executive meetings, and the like have become no-go areas for most, and especially backbench members of council. This is the very first meeting that I have been in the council chamber since the new system took place. Mr. Chairman, this proposal is rational, it's timely, it's democratic in intent and in effect. It does not mandate us walking out of the chamber tonight. It gives nearly 2 months for officers of this council to make necessary changes to this chamber or to facilitate full council meetings in another suitable location. In a meeting, as you, Mr. Chairman, watching from above will know, there will be a current of accord or on occasion discord, where, conducted courteously, I sincerely hope, individual councillors may well form different views on a subject that could lead them to abstain, to vote for, to vote against a motion on an issue, a decision that perhaps does not align with their own group position. Impossible to do in our current arrangement. No one can fully pick up the vibe in a meeting that they are watching from 10 miles away on a Zoom call. In any case, they cannot cast a vote remotely, whatever they think. Mr. Chairman, let us not rush foolishly, but let us plan properly to reintroduce full representative democratic and constitutional debate, votes and decision-making by the 43 councillors who have been elected to be the councillors for across West Berkshire. Let's do it with effect from our budget meeting in February. 2 months of time for officers and administration to get their act together to make sure that the 150,000 residents of West Berkshire know that their 43 elected councillors are there to speak and vote on their behalf. Mr. Chairman, I ask that the council will support us in this and that we get back to normal style meetings, and perhaps we can then stand as well in full council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Brooks, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? Thank you very much. Therefore, members, I open this up to debate, and I have Councillor Linden. Councillor Linden.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel very, very strongly about this. I've spoken to the officers, including the monitor officer of this, and I feel very strongly that members have the democratic right to attend a full council meeting. I fully understand the health implications on the limitations on this chamber, unlike the House of Commons, which was packed to the rafters at the budget debate. I think that every Conservative every Green and every Liberal Democrat councillor has a right to a full, as they're elected, right to vote at full council meetings. Even if we do not have the full digitalisation and we just have a camera and have recordings post the meeting on YouTube. I think we do need, unfortunately, to spend the money to find additional accommodation, whether it's a school or elsewhere. The financially strapped fire authority needed a meeting, and we actually had to rent out a hotel, and it's going to be tough when we come to that budget next February. But it is going to be difficult. Okay, luckily we've got now a Thiel fire station to hold our meetings, but we do really need to meet together, and we really need to meet on the budget. And I've got a concern, maybe it's a false concern, that if this is ever challenged, I do not want to have our council meetings being illegal, especially a budget meeting. The cost of that could be in the tens and hundreds of millions of pounds after a challenge. And I don't want a challenge. I've been on this council for nearly 34 years, and I'm not having this council being in the same state as Slough for different reasons. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I too was very much in favour of this, and I also voiced that at Governance and Ethics. I do believe that we do need to we have been told to learn to live with COVID, and part of that is moving forward. However, since then, circumstances have substantially changed with the new variant. And I think we have to be mindful of that. And I think the residents are obviously going to be mindful of that as well. And they don't want to see their elected members being put at risk, by all coming together as Councillor Jeffreys has proposed. But I do think that subject to that, subject to the COVID rules, subject to the variant, we should try and at least move back to face-to-face meetings, if that is appropriate at that time, for the next full council meeting in March. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be supporting the motion, of course. I go along with my leader. But I do want to make a point which, my email to Councillor Bridgman earlier today alluded to. Look at us on the screen. There is no technical reason why a fully democratic process could not continue if the legislation was changed to allow us to carry on with hybrid meetings with members taking a full part who, for whatever reason, feel they cannot or are unwilling to come into the chamber. So I would urge those members who are inclined not to support this move, because it does most likely incur additional costs, and sadly the public probably don't support the democratic process having a lot of money spent on it. I won't go into the reasons why that might be, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So I would like members opposite, whose friends in government could act to change the legislation, quite simply, I'm sure, to do that as well, so that we have the option on occasions to carry on with fully hybrid, fully democratic meetings. That's what I want to say, Chairman.
Sorry. Councillor Masters. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that having sat through the last governance and ethics meeting on the 15th, and these issues were raised within the debate about the constitutional amendments, it was quite striking, not only that that proposal that we voted on earlier went through governance and ethics pretty unanimously. There was a lot of support for something along the lines of this motion. And I commend Councillor Rolls and Councillor Linden for their, their support as far as, the proposals go. I do think we have to put the optics of this together. There is going to be potential cost, and the council will have to manage that in terms of how we present that to the public. But there's also the risk around COVID and the new variants, and I accept Councillor Rolls' comments about that, and with the changing situation as we move into winter, and the new variant is going to cause some concern. But hopefully by March things will be a little easier on the levels of infection, etc. And I think we do need to offer the public that full democratic process. As Councillor Linden said, we have a duty to our residents, and we have a duty to this council, that everybody has the opportunity to be in a fully democratic process. So I'm on a personal level, I will be supporting this, and I take great comfort that as I said, that the Governance and Ethics Committee seem to be of a mind similar. So I would urge members opposite, virtually opposite, who might be inclined to vote against this to consider the democratic aspect. So that's all I've got to say, Chairman. Thank you,
Councillor Masters. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chairman. I absolutely agree in principle with Councillor Dillon's motion. What I struggle with is the idea of setting a hard date by which we return to the chamber. I would like us to return to the chamber as soon as possible, but I think it's too soon right now, while there is still uncertainty about the extent to which the Omicron variant is possibly going to bring about change. So I'd like to see the motion amended to say as soon as possible. So I can't vote for it as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. I support what Councillor Burke just said. I think, and I'm going to agree with Councillor Vickers about a complete disappointment that government hasn't brought forward legislation to permit fully hybrid meetings. Absolutely. It is ludicrous that we are in this situation. I'm also, and I agree with some of the comments, I'm astonished at the way Parliament is conducting its business. I find that ridiculous in a COVID pandemic. My concern with this motion, and my problem with this motion, is what is missing is a budget. There is no mention of money in this motion. Councillor Linden says we have to spend the money. I ask, okay, how much? Things are not normal. And by the way, I reject that argument that we are open to challenge on our decisions. I think officers have correctly advised us about how to conduct legitimate hybrid meetings with legitimate votes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be meeting tonight in the way we are. And I trust everyone will agree, we are conducting proper, legitimate votes on matters before us. Councillor Owen refers to return to near normality, but I simply reflect what Councillor Bowick has just said. Things are not normal. COVID safety cannot be ignored. So I have no disagreement with the thrust of the motion. I want to be back in the chamber with everyone, debating properly and voting properly. Absolutely. But at the moment, the advice we have from health and safety and from public health is that we cannot properly have everyone in the chamber. And if we can't have everyone in the chamber and we want to conduct a full council meeting, we've got to go somewhere else. So my question is, how much is that worth? If it's 500 quid, yeah, we probably would, none of us would bat an eyelid. What if it's 5,000 for a meeting? What if it's 10,000 for a meeting? What about the AV? Are we going to stream meetings? If we're going to stream meetings, are we going to hire in AV for the meeting? I simply say at the way in which this motion is phrased, I cannot support the way in which the motion is phrased because it does not address the critical question as to how much it will cost to do what Councillor Dillon is seeking. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pattendon.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, the point is that if we don't start to think about this now, then, we're not thinking ahead, and we're not looking to the future. I think, but by
having a date and saying, okay, this is something that we want to aim for, gives us the opportunity to plan for it. If we don't, then we're sort of heads down and not looking forward. I think that's really the point that this motion is trying to offer. It's a way of looking forward and getting back to the style of meetings that I think we would all prefer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, I think Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Berwick was concerned about what he termed a hard date in the motion. The date in the motion actually says that including the council budget meeting in March 2022. And I think that's the important thing. The budget meeting is the most important meeting of the year, and it's important for every member of the council to be able to take part in that. And regarding alternatives, if we can't meet in the council chamber, a few years ago, we discussed the local plan, and because of public interest, we held that meeting in the school hall at St. Bart's School, and that was webcast. So if we could do it then, we could do it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macro. Councillor Cole, Jay.
Thank you, Chairman. This question of democratic process not really working, I disagree. I think Councillor Bridgman, who's not in the chamber, has just proven that it can be made to work. So I would certainly have to disagree on that. I'm afraid I can't vote for this. I can't vote for an uncosted open motion like this. I'm totally in favour of getting back to being in a chamber as soon as possible, but panic stations to get it done by a certain date, no. Won't vote for it. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. And Councillor Pask.
Chairman, thank you. You asked us not to be repetitive. I'll try not to be. Sitting at home again as I am, I can't wait to be back in there with you. I wholeheartedly support that. Having said that, I have to say, despite being triple vaccinated, safety is paramount. I trust everyone has taken a lateral flow. I trust no one there has COVID, but we have to be safe. And as others have said, to move to a bigger environment where we can socially distance all of us in one room has to be costed. We would be irresponsible not to be. So I support the thrust of this too, but not I support the principle, but not the detail. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution, Councillor Pask. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you all. I entirely agree with Councillor Pattenden. I think everybody wants to be back in the chamber. I think we're vehemently arguing about the same thing here. I think it's how and when, and the fact that there's hard lines in here. There's just a couple of points I wanted to pick up on, and particularly I came into tonight thinking, of course, we all want to be back in the chamber. Councillor Jeffrey nearly put me off because he said something around officers found a way to trim back councillor control. And I dispute that. Officers of this council have worked extremely hard to keep the democratic process in the hands of us as elected members. At any time, it could have been put directly into the Chief Executive Officer's hands, and that has not happened. So I resent that remark, and I would say, actually, what is happening tonight is a full debate where everybody is able to take part and participate. So I really refute that mark, Councillor Jeffrey, and I found it quite offensive, your tone towards our officers who have tried so hard to get this right. So I just wanted to say that I do think there is an element there. Oh, of course, we can all take part, but we have to look at cost, because ultimately the cost will be to our residents. And if we pay for somewhere else to host of an event, we will have to take that into account with the budget and look at where we can potentially make that saving to make a balanced budget. It's very easy to talk about schools in St. Bart's, but so schools, exactly as we are living with health and safety measures and COVID restrictions. So at the moment, it's quite simple. The schools do not want us. Those inquiries have been made. We do want to get there. Of course, we all want to come back together as soon as we possibly can. I, like Councillor Bridgman, would far have preferred if the legislation change had stayed in place. I don't actually agree either with Councillor Jeffrey on getting back to a normal style, because the reality is there is no normal style after COVID. We have all changed the way we work, and I think we as a council have changed the way we work. We will be looking to present meetings. We have seen far more people join us on these meetings. We want to keep that. If we go to some strange venue, then we won't be in the position to necessarily stream those meetings to all the public that have got used to us doing it here in the chamber. So of course we want to be back in here, but I won't be able to support this motion in its current format, where it gives me hard timelines, where I'm looking at a moving situation day by day. We're having to do that because of COVID and the new variant. We've got an LOED on Monday because of the rates here. We know we're going through winter pressures. By March, do I know it's going to be any different? No, I'm sorry, Councillor Jeffrey. I really wish I could tell you March will be the date. I want to be there, but I can't support this motion in its current format.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. Mrs. Clark, is it in my power as a chairman to say this will be the last councillor I'll take, Councillor Abbs? I'm conscious of all the business we've got to do, and we've had 12 speakers on this. I think we've heard it quite well. I leave it with you, Councillor Abbs.
I think that there are currently 2 members indicating a wish to speak, and members have a right to speak. I think you can ask members to be brief.
Thank you.
But I think members have the right to address council.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification on that, but I just will point out we've got another 4 motions to go, and we are 25 past 9. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Very briefly, I don't understand how we can stop members attending chamber. What we're basing on just doesn't make any sense at all. If I was not on the shadow, but as a backbencher, I would be walking in the chamber. I would not accept being blocked at the door from entering chamber because of something. The council, I was elected to represent the people. If being in the chamber is the right way to represent the people, I have to be in the chamber. If it costs money, it costs money. Go cost it. I'm sure we would have accepted an amendment that basically is go and get this costed quickly, but that is not coming forth. It just seems to be, okay, let's vote against it. So we'll go. I just be brief. So there you go.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs.
So, Councillor McKim, would you like to say something?
No, that's enough. Thank you. Thank you. We'll stop. Councillor McKinnon, thank you. We haven't got time for it. Councillor Stewart, thank you.
I have a point of order, I think, Chairman, because we've heard lots of people talking tonight about in principle agreeing with many of the points in this motion and the feeling behind it and the intent, but actually there are some things here which people can't vote for, and in other motions we've actually agreed on the night where we can make some amendments that would allow us to vote it through. So I think the question is, therefore, is that something that we can do tonight?
Thank you. Mrs. Clark.
Yes, so a member who hasn't yet spoken could propose an amendment to a form, and if that's seconded, then the amendment can be debated and, if necessary, voted upon then once it's been debated, and then that would become the substantive motion. So yes, an amendment can be made if a member chooses to formally move that and it is seconded.
Thank you. Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 points. Firstly, I'm glad my safety isn't in the hands of Councillor Abbs. Secondly, if the amendment to the motion is that it should be costed and then be decided on, then I'm happy to formally move that is the amendment.
Thank you. And Councillor Masters. You've already spoken, Councillor Masters. Actually, you can't come back in a second time. Sorry.
Oh, it was just to propose a second. So my apologies, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I think at last we are done. Just for information, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 speakers on that motion. Thank you very much. Mr. Rumors, any telephone calls? All clear. Therefore, I will come to the closing of the debate. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. This is
Councillor Brooks, did you?
I seconded it. Reserve my right.
He reserved his rights. Yeah, thank you.
May I go on?
Thank you.
Wasn't seconded, but I'd recommend you move on, Chairman. We won't accept the amendment on this side of the chamber. I'd like to make my remarks, please.
Can we resolve whether I wasn't clear that Councillor Sumner had moved a formal amendment.
No, I hadn't called that. No.
You called me chairman and now you've interrupted me.
Yes, thank you. Just to clear this up.
Do you want me to clarify? Yeah, I did say that if members are happy, then I'm happy to formally move that it should be costed before it progresses.
Well, the avoidance of doubt, the proposer and the seconder will not accept the amendment.
Yeah, I think that a formal amendment to the motion can be moved, and we then move to a debate on the amendment. So if that as is being moved now or was moved and as under a point of order clarified that was a formal proposal for an amendment to the motion, which I don't know then whether, can we clarify that that's been seconded?
A point of order, that was not put forward as a proposal. It was put forward as a question and not followed up. Councillor Sumner should have been more robust and put it forward as a proposal. And the debate, frankly, Chairman, has moved on.
And on a point of order, Chairman, I was told I had to come into the chamber to second a motion that isn't even going to be debated tonight. So I'm afraid Councillor Masters, whether he's spoken or not, surely under our constitution can't be the seconder of that amendment.
Well, I think, Chairman, actually that the motion, given that it wasn't seconded, and then you have moved into the closure order. In other items, we would not at that point allow the debate to go back into the substantive debate. So I am of the view that we are in the closure order and that the proposed motion or proposed amendment, apologies, cannot now be accepted, and we remain with the closure.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We've talked about a number of things here. We talk about budget and the cost. Well, Councillor McKinnon spent £4.6 million last year less than he needed to run our services. I suggest there is, and has £22 million in the reserves. I suggest that we are over-egging the cost of going out and finding premises that would enable every council member to meet on a social distance basis, Chairman, and therefore be as safe as they can be. We talk about the new variant. At this stage, we don't know whether it's mild or worse than the present variant. We are making many, many assumptions. And what this motion is doing is saying for the budget meeting, the principal meeting of a council, the principal meeting where we commit a budget of nearly £130 million of residents' money to our services, should be held in this ridiculous way, clunky, hard, almost impossible to follow if you're a member of the public, and unable to have proper debate to commit that money. What price democracy in this chamber? If it costs £5,000, well, we save that on biscuits because we don't even give our councillors who come here often without dinner a biscuit to get them through the evening. So now we're going to agonise over £5,000 potentially for having a meeting proper, appropriate, correct, socially distanced. It is very, very silly. We have in the past for key meetings, both the Vodafone planning meeting, which was at the old Turnpike School or Trinity School, and the DPD local plan, we have gone out and we've hired premises because we want to see good business done. Good business done. Therefore, you should be supporting this, because I'm not saying we crowbar ourselves in here, although I think there is some legal entitlement for a member of the council to come to a council meeting, and that needs to be taken up elsewhere. We're not asking people to crowbar themselves in here. We're saying find the premises that are large enough to have a proper meeting, not this one in this ridiculous mode. And I will say to Tony Vickers, the danger, sir, to my councillor Tony Vickers, the danger, sir, is if you go to a full remote type of working, then people will be phoning it in from their bedroom, from their lounge with their feet up, from a pub, dare I say, perhaps even from up a tree. So actually, it is time to try and get back to normal, the best of the old normal, Councillor Doherty, with some good things of the new normal. But the best of the old normal is people meeting, having a proper meeting, being able to have a sides, being able to look across the chamber and say, Ross, I could support you on that. Body language, not this ridiculous mode we've been in for far too long. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. It's now the opportunity of the executive member, Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say, I think the general public will be pretty embarrassed by the way this debate, to be honest. I think all of us agree that we want to be in a chamber together, no doubt about it, and seeing each other. And as Councillor Brooks just said, we can get to get body language and so forth. The reality of life is we've now got Omicron. Who knows what's going to happen with that? We have health and safety issues. And I just don't think we can tie ourselves down to a specific date. It is just ludicrous. We need to sort of grow up a bit. I mean, one thing that's come out tonight, I think, is that the system we're operating is actually working pretty well. I'm not saying that's something I condone and want to go forward with, but as a temporary measure, it is working. And I just don't think we can agree, I'm afraid, to the timetable that's being put down this motion. And regrettably, I'm going to have to vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. I'll just hold the proceedings here at the moment. I've got Councillor Brooks. Is this anything that we ought to be sharing with the rest of council, this discussion?
Well, happy to do so, Chairman.
No,
I just said
I'm asking the monitoring officer.
I think it is, Councillor Brooks is asking around. Apologies. It was a query regarding process and the time constraints that we are facing. Certainly we can come to that, if you like, at the end of this item with regard to the rest of the business.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear to everybody in the chamber that these discussions just can't wander up and speak to the monitoring officer or me. There is some process to go by. And I'd just like to make that point, Councillor Brooks. Thank you. Anyway, thank you. If I can ask the monitoring officer, Mrs. Clark, now to conduct the indicative vote. Thank you. Oh, no, sorry. I do apologise. Councillor Jeffrey.
You probably do want to hear me say something, because for the very simple reason that I'm actually going to accept one of the remarks that the leader of council made. And let me say here, I apologise if I did literally misspeak in such a way that it appeared that I was attacking the officers, which I'm not. Frankly, leader, I am attacking the the executive for not being prepared to get down and sort this out some time ago. You're being given 2 months, 2 complete months from now to get the whole thing put together. There is no way in which an appropriate amount of money cannot be dedicated to what the democratic process of administering a £130 million public funded budget. And I do ask all members to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. I now ask Mrs. Clark to conduct the indicative vote.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can, if I can ask all members in favour of this motion to raise their Zoom hands for the indicative vote. Thank you, Chairman. And if I can now ask those who've voted in favour to lower their hands. I've noted 16 in favour. So, and those who are opposed to the motion, can I ask them to now raise their hands? So 16. Okay, so I can see 16 members opposed to the recommendation, the motion on the indicative vote. I don't know, Chairman, whether you have cast your vote and whether you would like to give an indication of how you would cast your casting vote.
I'm with that.
Thank
I do
you.
apologise in discussion.
Thank you. So that would have been 17. So the motion would be rejected on the indicative vote. If we can now move to members in the chamber. Yeah, it was 16 in favour and 17 opposed on the indicative. So if I can ask members in the chamber to now conduct . So I note that there are still 2 members to cast their vote. It's currently tied. There is 1 vote remaining.
My hand up.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. So of the members in the chamber, that there are now 11 voting to approve that motion. So that would indicate that the motion is carried. There are 10 opposed.
Point of order, please, Chairman.
Yep.
May I speak?
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Orr, yeah.
Yeah, my understanding was that the actual vote in the council would follow the indicative vote. And that has not happened, so not. Where are we?
So that is correct, Councillor Law, in terms of the motion that was moved to agree this format of arrangement. It was agreed that the motion in the chamber should follow suit.
If I may again, Chairman, it would seem to me that 1 or 2 people who abstained in the vote on the indicative vote also did not vote as the indicative vote indicated. They abstained as well on the vote in the chamber. They should not have done so following the agreed setup.
I think, Councillor Law, just to confirm, I think all members voted either for or against. So unless any member considers that their vote has been improperly cast, it would appear that that's been displayed on the chamber.
Well, I got to say that this hybrid system has worked well up until 2 minutes ago.
Oh, Councillor, you're showing us voting in favour of this motion. Yeah. So sorry. So having reviewed this, that the chairman's vote is showing as being in favour of the motion. The chairman was in fact voting against the motion.
Yeah, I do apologise, but it's pushed the wrong button. And I was in discussion, I must admit, with Councillor Jones. I do apologise.
So I think can I ask? Can we reset the? I think that this is one of the challenges with technology. I think if we had done this by a show of hands, the chairman's vote would have been very clear. And I think
I understand fully. However, I think we've just proved the point.
That's fine. So I've asking that So do members want to recast the vote, or are you happy to accept that the chairman's?
I move next business, Chairman. I move next business.
It's lost. And I hope the press are picking up the farce that has happened here tonight.
And next business, I think I'm right. So if I move next business, that has to be carried out, doesn't it? If it's
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, we still, the vote we've just had contradicts our agreed regulations and standing orders, as we agreed several councils ago, as to how we would work this hybrid system.
So
that is true.
As the chairman has said, he inadvertently pressed the wrong button. So I suggest that you,
Chairman, in order to make
reset, continue.
We have now been on this for 45, 50 minutes. The rest of your schedule is now up the duff, sir. I, on this side, as leader tonight, in the absence of my leader, is accepting that the vote was cast 11 against in this chamber and 10 for. I'm accepting that and therefore move on. The vote is lost. We may not meet. We may meet like this in February. God help us. I don't know how we're ever going to get a budget done.
So just to clarify, Councillor Law, that has been regularised, that the defect or the error was identified when we reviewed the vote.
Well, thank you for that. And I really appreciate Councillor Brooks clarifying that. Agree. Let's move on.
I withdraw up the duff.
Chairman, I do apologise for a further point of order, but I do think it's important, given what Councillor Law has just said. Very quickly, I was the author of and proposer of the motion on these meetings indicative votes. The motion was specific that the indicative vote would be non-binding and it would be open to the entire membership in the chamber to vote whatever way they thought, taking into account that indicative vote. That's all I say. So I disagree with Councillor Law that the indicative vote is somehow binding on members in the chamber. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, I'm very happy because there was a mistake made by you, sir. I'm very happy to acknowledge and accept that.
Thank you. I don't know where we go with it.
So I think that the matter is resolved, that the motion has been lost, and so we can move on to the next
Thank
item.
you. My apologies. Members, it's 10:15. I think I'm going to have to propose that this meeting goes on after 10 o'clock. Can I have a second for that, please? Councillor Brooks, do we need to take a vote?
Yes, I'm happy to do a vote by simple show of hands in the chamber.
Are we clear of what the stop time is?
Well, it's now 10:30. If we agree this, it will be 10:30. We cannot complete the business, and I've had discussion with the Vice Chairman, and as I put out, as I mentioned before, we took on these motions, but anything that's not concluded will be deferred to the next meeting. Now, I think at 10:15, I don't feel as if we can take on another motion. We have another 3 yet to put through that aren't going to be debated, and then we've got members' questions after that. So I think at this stage, I don't think we can take on another. Do you agree, Rick? It's quarter to 10 now. As you say, we're on 40 minutes for the last one. I don't want to get to the middle of the next motion, which is quite.
As long as members, and on this side, I'm committing now that we will be crisp on our.
I asked for that on the last one, and I did try and say.
You could get through 2 more, sir.
No, I won't take 2 because I've got other business as well. I'll take 1, but please take 1, and then we'll see where we go. I've got a second. We need a vote now. We're going to go to 10:30.
So can I ask members in the chamber to raise their hands if they are in agreement that the meeting continue till 10:30? Thank you, Chairman. That appears to have unanimous support. Thank you. That's been agreed.
We're now on to the second one, which is civility in public life. Motion A on the agenda pack. Councillor Claire Rolls to move this motion. Thank you.
I'd like to move the motion, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Doherty, are you going to second?
I'd like to second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Council will debate this motion this evening in order to facilitate the discharge of business in accordance with procedure rule 498. And can I ask Councillor Rolls to speak to her motion, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I was prompted to bring this motion to full council following the tragic murder of Officer David Amos MP. I was lucky enough to have known David personally and went on several parliamentary delegations abroad with him. He was one of the nicest, charming people you could ever meet, and he encouraged me to get into politics. David Amos embodies everything about this motion. He approached everyone with kindness and warmth. He was civil to all colleagues across the political divide, and he respected the views of others, even if they differed from his own. Sadly, his untimely death has also put a spotlight back onto the threat to the personal safety of elected members after the death of Joe Cox MP. Whether parliamentarians or local councillors going about doing their jobs, this should be without fear or intimidation. On the face of it, this motion effectively asks all of us to abide by the Council's code of conduct by treating each of us with respect and to agree with one another in a polite manner, whether this is in person or online, which we should be all doing anyway. I hope that tonight this motion highlights that this is something that we must always remind ourselves of every day, to keep up the standards of humility and respect at all times in going about our council business, in interacting with each other and in debates, and particularly on social media. Live streaming of this meeting, together with other council committees, has helped to engage the public more in politics, but we must harness this in a positive way and maintain the public's trust by respectful, appropriate behaviour at all times. Another aspect of this motion to council tonight, which is incredibly important to me and I know across the chamber, is to seek to achieve greater diversity and inclusion across elected members. We are all acutely aware of the lack of diversity across this chamber and the need to particularly encourage more women into politics. In 2019, there were simply not enough women elected to this council, and our proportionality is one of the worst in the country. If we are going to attract more women candidates to step forward in West Berkshire, we need to address the barriers that are there. And one of them is what is often perceived by women as a confrontational and aggressive approach in debates, which often puts women off from stepping forward. Whilst debate is very much part of the role in putting forward your opinion and case, this should be done without fear of personal attack, harassment, or intimidation. And I'm pleased that a group of female colleagues, Councillor Culver, Councillor Stewart and Councillor Martha Vickers and myself have come together cross-party to help address the barriers to attracting more women and to work to encourage more women to step forward. But we all have a role to play in this, every single one of us, by the way in which we conduct ourselves at all times and being mindful of the public's perception of our behaviour. It is also important that we take responsibility for our mental health and well-being, and I'm sure that Councillor Stewart, as mental health champion, will support me on this point. As elected members, we are often subjected to harmful online abuse, and this motion encourages all of us to support each other in what can often be personal intimidating attacks. It also seeks to stop online abuse occurring between or by elected members. This motion makes it clear that the council will also not tolerate elected members being victim of abuse and will take legal action where necessary and where appropriate. It is also right that in the appropriate circumstances, members can request that personal information to be treated as sensitive, making it exempt from publication. Above all, as members elected to serve our community, we must not feel that our personal security is compromised to the extent that we no longer feel safe meeting our residents at surgeries and events. Speaking and listening to residents is a fundamental cornerstone of our democracy, and it sits at the heart of the UK Local Government Association's joint statement on civility in public life. And as Safer Streets champion, I know that West Berkshire Council is working closely with Thames Valley Police to keep our towns and villages safe from street harassment across the district, which helps us all to not only be safe, but to feel safe. Chairman, in putting this motion before council, I hope that it finds unanimous support, and I commend the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Councillor Dockey, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Members, I now open this up to debate and
Chairman, sorry, apologies, point of order. Will you be taking our amendment before you move on to discussing the substantive?
I think she's got a.
Yes, if Councillor Culver wants to. Make
You've not got your hand up. If I think you need to indicate.
It's on the agenda, though. It was agreed with Council Officer Vicky Yule that we would have that amendment this evening. I received an email about that a couple of days ago.
I'm not privy to that.
I think if you wish to move an amendment, you can do that. And I am aware that you had circulated that in advance, which is appreciated, but that's so that we can display that on, we'll put that on the screen. So if you wish to move that, and it's a matter for the chairman if he wants to allow you to come in at this point now that the item has been introduced, to move that, then that's a matter for the chairman, whether he wishes to take that now.
I think it would be sensible we took it early. So we'll take the amendment now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
So we're going to put that up, I think, first.
Yeah.
And then if I can invite you to set out your amendment.
Great, thank you. I should be very brief, Chairman. I very much welcome this amendment this evening and thank Councillor Rolls for that. My amendment seeks to strengthen this by saying that we should not accept councillors using sock puppet accounts. For the benefits of members of this council, a sock puppet account is when someone creates an anonymous account on social media and does not use their account transparently so that people know who it is who's making those comments. So I think on the screen now you have the extra line. It's very simple. It will strengthen the motion and I commend it to the chamber this evening. It is an increasing problem around the country. Recently, the former mayor of Camden resigned after being exposed as having a sock puppet account, and a councillor in Angus is also being investigated by his national party as a result of doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Marsh, thank you.
Does Councillor Marsh wish to reserve his rights?
Do you wish to reserve your rights, Councillor Marsh, at this stage?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Chairman, there are a number of members indicating a desire to speak, but I think those hands were raised in relation to the substantive motion. So if we can just clarify or ask members who wish to speak to the amendment only to have their hands raised at this point. And this is with a view to trying to move this on. So I can see Councillor Rolls has her hand raised. Councillor Rolls, on an amendment, as the mover of the motion, you will be the last person to speak at the closure of that debate, and otherwise you're not permitted to speak to the proposed amendment. So, Chairman, you've got Councillor Berwick.
Councillor Berwick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not happy at all with this amendment. I deplore the practice of anonymous castigation and accusations and abuse, online abuse, and I've been victim of that myself. But I think to assume that sort of behaviour is being, which this amendment implies, to assume that behaviour is being instigated by councillors is beyond me. I don't know where the evidence comes to make that implication. So I certainly won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman.
Chairman, apologies. If a member uses an anonymous account and is anonymous, how on earth do you know that is a councillor posting or whatever it might be? And if they're found out, then it's a breach of the code of conduct anyway. So I don't follow how this adds anything at all.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers.
Just in one sentence, I would never correspond with anybody in any social media who uses an anonymous account, and I support the amendment because I think it expresses a very strong belief that we should be supporting. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. I think now we go to telephone. Any telephone votes? No. I therefore, Councillor Marsh, your opportunity, I think, to speak.
We would be ignoring a real problem. It's one thing if I, and all my accounts, I've got 2 Twitter accounts, are both in my own name. If I go too far and criticise a fellow councillor or indeed anyone else, then that's open to investigation by the monitor.
Chairman, we can't hear.
That better? Yeah. Can you hear me now, Councillor Law?
Yeah, carry on.
It's one thing if it's bad enough, but at least it can be traced and tracked and challenged, and if necessary, action taken. If there are these anonymous accounts, it's an insidious process. No one is necessarily saying that councillors do it. What we're saying is councillors shouldn't be doing it. I can't see why anybody would object to that. And just to give an example of the kind of thing that we're talking about for people who haven't come across it, within minutes of a recent executive meeting, an extremely offensive tweet attacking Councillor Masters, one of our fellow councillors, suggesting he'd been in the pub during the meeting. Now, it might sound comical because Steve won't go to, I can't get him to go to the pub. He doesn't drink. But actually, when you switch on your Twitter account and you're being criticised in that way, in that personal way, the same account, you can spot a sock puppet account a mile off. I used to have a Twitter account at The Guardian with more than 50,000 followers, so I know a bit about how Twitter works. You can spot a sock puppet account a mile off. It will have very few followers and it's hardly following anybody because that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in making personal attacks to upset or undermine or individuals. So that same account, which is very good, very regular in its attacks on that particular council, it also has it in for the leader of Thatcham Town Council, who regularly gets offensive tweets aimed at him. And it gets to the point when you're the victim of that, you don't like to use social media at all. You don't. Maybe some people think that they won't do because of that. You don't like to go to Twitter. You don't like to go onto Facebook for fear of what someone might be saying of a personal nature. It's one thing disagreeing with policies. As we've seen tonight, we can do that very robustly and even outspokenly. But personal attacks, they happen. So I've mentioned that, I've mentioned an account there. There's others, you can spot them. And we're saying we shouldn't have anything to do with them. And by that, I don't necessarily mean that the council is doing it. I mean, if there's an account like that, if there was an account like that, that purported to come from a green source, we'd try and find out who was doing it and stop them, because it could be out of order. So that's all we're saying, that we shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be encouraging it. It doesn't just refer to council, it refers to members of the public and groups. And that's why we're putting this forward. And I'm quite surprised, frankly, that it hasn't been accepted by the proposer of the motion, which incidentally we strongly support. And we see this as part of the message that the council is putting across in the substantive motion. So we'll be voting for our amendment, of course, and we'll be voting for the main amendment, the main motion as well. And I urge people to support the amendment as well, because what does it look like if you vote against it? It looks like you're condoning this kind of behaviour. Thank you very much, Chair and Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty is the exec member.
I think Councillor Brooks has his hand raised,
Okay.
and we're not yet in the formal closure process because on an amendment, it's not the seconder, it starts with the executive member.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see the point that the two Green members are trying to put across, but I think they are now taking a motion that was about civility in public life and trying to graft on some other aspect that bothers them that I think is covered by the Code of Conduct, that would be frowned upon and jumped upon by all the members here. And therefore we're overcomplicating a motion that my side were very happy not only to vote for, but not to talk on, so that we might even get through to another motion rather than 5 of them going somewhere else in the future. So, Chairman, I can't support the motion because I think it's overcomplicating a straightforward motion that everybody could support. And now we have dissension where we didn't need it.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Now go to the closing order of the debate. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, you and I agree entirely.
Stop that. Stop that.
It's quite an interesting one for me because there's things I feel passionate about. I feel passionate about smear campaigns against particular groups of people. When I see people hashtagging Tory corruption, Tory lies on a really frequent, regular basis, when I come out of council meetings and I see other councillors tweeting about how I was in a council meeting. So there's lots of things we could actually go down the route of here. So I'm entirely in agreement with you, Councillor Brooks, that Councillor Rolls' motion sums everything up. It's covered by our code of conduct. This is about civil debate this evening where we all agree to adhere by our code of conduct. We all have our passions. I deplore the use of the sock puppet accounts that you talk about. I don't actually have any following me or whatever, but I do think we're in danger of complicating the motion, and I think Councillor Rolls has put a really good motion together, and therefore I'll be supporting the main motion, but I will not be supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Culver, your opportunity.
I don't have anything else to add, but I would just say, you know what, David, sorry, I thought we were talking about civility. You're laughing at me. I would just echo what David said, basically. If we don't vote for this, which is a very simple amendment to strengthen the motion, then it will look to the public as if we're condoning the use of sock puppets. It's as simple as that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Rolls.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I don't agree with Councillor Culver. I don't think by not voting for this that it means that we condone it. I totally agree with Councillor Brooks and Councillor Doherty and Councillor Bowick that we can't go through single issues. There are a number of issues on social media, countless. Where do we stop? Do we spend all night citing them? I don't want to give, this is about the code of conduct. It's an umbrella point, and I hope that we don't lose sight of that through debating one single issue. Thank you. So I don't support the amendment, but I do welcome the fact that Councillor Culver supports the motion, the main motion.
Thank you. I'll ask the monitoring officer now to conduct an indicative vote, please.
Thank you. If I can ask all members to now raise their Zoom hands if they are in favour of supporting the proposed amendment. Okay. There are currently 8 hands raised. Can I ask those members who've raised their hands to lower their Zoom hands? And then any members who wish to oppose the proposed amendment, please raise their Zoom hands. Okay, that is now far in excess of those who were supportive. So that proposed amendment has failed. We now return, therefore, to the substantive item. I believe there were a number of members who wished to speak to that earlier.
Point of order. I think you've got to take a vote in the chamber, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Apologies, I am getting ahead of myself. So if I can ask the Zoom host to and members in the chamber to use their microphones to give a formal vote on the proposed amendment. Thank you. That is all votes cast, and that vote has the proposed amendment has failed because there are 17 against and 4 for. So we now return, Chairman, to the substantive motion proposed by Councillor Rolls, and apologies again for running ahead of myself.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks. Your hand up, or is that an old hand? We're now on the substantive motion. Discuss again. Does any member wish to speak? I've got Councillor Brooks, I've got Councillor Culver, I've got Councillor Linden, Stewart and Vickers. Who would like to speak? Pardon? I haven't. Councillor Beck's now come up. Yep, okay, Councillor Beck. Councillor Beck, would you like to speak? He's gone. Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for taking the time to debate my amendment. We, as I've already said in the Green Party, we support this, and on the surface of it, you look at it and it's entirely uncontroversial. But I just want to take the opportunity to make a few points. What the motion doesn't do is define what civility is. I think it's open to interpretation. There's a difference between us holding each other to account and debating and having scrutiny and being unnecessarily rude and snide to one another. I fear that this motion might be used as a way to characterise debate and disagreement as something which is uncivil. So I think we need to be very clear about what the difference between those two things are. And I'll just give some examples as food for thought. It's actually a year tomorrow since we debated the universal basic income motion in this chamber, and members opposite used the following phrases. And I would ask members this evening to reflect upon whether these are examples of civil debate. We were told lies, damned lies, and green statistics, that we run straight to the press with anything that is presented to us. No evidence was provided for that. We were told that our motion was bizarre, bonkers, political snake oil, utter insanity and harebrained schemes. So I would just ask members to reflect upon that. If we were to support a motion to say that we would be civil to each other, would we, if we were to go through that debate again, accept those comments, or would we say that they are uncivil? Perhaps we politicians are too close to this to make a judgment at the end of the day. You could say those things are the normal rough and tumble of politics, and if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. So maybe we should ask the question, what does the public think? And after that debate about the UBI, members of the public wrote to the Newbury Weekly News and they contacted the former Chief Executive, Nick Carter, and they expressed their discomfort about the tone of the debate. And they went so far as to say that they would never consider standing to be a member of this chamber. Now, as Claire Rouse has pointed out this evening, there are a group of cross-party women who want to encourage more women to come into this chamber. But if the people watching the meetings are then contacting the Chief Executive and the paper to say they would not even want to stand for election to this chamber, then we are letting ourselves down. And if we want to be civil, we need to have a civil debate, and we need to address the fact that not just people in this chamber, members of the public are really, really concerned about the way that we conduct each other. One of my members has been repeatedly called a liar on social media. You know, this is not held to account. We've made complaints. Nothing is done. How does this motion give weight to the code of conduct and to the complaints process? How will it change anything? Unless it's going to change anything, it lacks meaning. So we will be supporting this amendment this evening, but I just want to make that point that we have to have debate. We live in a democracy. We won't agree with each other, but we do have to think about the kind of tone and language we use, because we can talk to young people, we can talk to Black and ethnic minority people, we can talk to women. If we conduct ourselves in an uncivil fashion in this chamber, they will not stand for office. And it's as simple as that. Just saying to them, oh, well, you know, it's quite good. You get a bit of an allowance and you can get some childcare, etc. That will not wash if we continue to talk to each other the way that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colbert. Members, I'll ask you to look at the clock, please. You did say that we would be sharp on this. Councillor Linden.
Yeah, I would agree with diversity. I've tried to encourage women to stand over the decades to get more women on this council. We also need more diversity. But my main point is that Nolan is not optional, and I think members on all sides have got to realise that. I'm sorry to say this. But I'm also really concerned, because it affects other people in this room, is that some of the stuff we get on social media, even with people who've actually put their names to it, it's uncivil, rudeness, bitchiness on people you're trying to help, and dismissive. And it really is disgusting that people think they've got an excuse, even though they publicly put their names forward on this. And people just need to be more polite and nicer on social media. And we're trying to do our best. We might always not succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
I'll just be really quick. Councillor Rolls know that I fully support this. I've been quoted in the Newbury Weekly News article that's been mentioned about behaviour breeds behaviour, and I'm a firm believer in that. It's the only thing in most cases that we can actually control as individuals is our own behaviour, and that's what I would like to see in this chamber, that we do in fact address these issues, much like Councillor Culver has described, and that despite the fact that we disagree sometimes, and I know that Councillor Brooks often says this, but we can do it in a really civil manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers, Martha.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Claire again for bringing this motion. As she said, you know, there are a few of us that are trying hard to look up what's going on in local government and why more women are putting themselves forward. I first stood on the council way back in the days of when David Rendell was our MP and also a member of the chamber. And we had a lot of women involved then. And I'm trying to think what was the difference between then and now. I think part of it is that the media generally has basically been very negative about politicians and basically sort of lowered their status in people's eyes. And I think mostly we are generally civil to each other. I mean, I think there have possibly been incidents where people have not behaved very well, but mostly I think we are. But I think one of the issues with women in government, I think it's in local government, is that central government has reduced the power of local government. And so you can ask yourself, what am I going to achieve by being a member of local government when your powers are being depleted all the time? And do you want to be part of something that really can't achieve things? You know, so I think that is probably one of our issues, and we need to fight against having our powers taken away from us. And also, I think we do need to listen to each other and respect each other's views. And there's a very good programme on Radio 4, which I listen to quite a lot, which basically asks two people to listen to the other, totally opposed point of views, and then feed back to them what they think they've heard. And I think this could be an activity that we could adopt ourselves, to listen to each other, respect each other's point of view, and not be denouncing it all the time.
Thank you. Members, the hands keep going up. We have other business and we've got to get a vote on this. Councillor Brooks.
Chairman, thank you very much. We support this. And I have said, and I do make little chidey remarks, I know, and I apologise, Councillor Marsh, about the pub comment. If you thought that was towards Councillor Masters, it was a generalisation. I talk about playing the ball rather than the person. Notice it? Won't correct person. And we need this civility. I think we generally achieve it in this chamber much more often than not. But you know, politics ain't an easy business. And we want people to come forward and want to be councillors, but there's a rough and tumble about politics outside of this chamber, on doorsteps. Who hasn't had a bad doorstep in this chamber that's made you feel terrible as you walk back down the garden path and you thought you didn't want to go out and do it again, but you did? And if you're going to have to overcome that to connect with your public, you're going to have to get used to a bit of rough and tumble. Now, there's rough and tumble, and then there's this dreadful spite and lack of respect that we have seen and we are hearing. And when I was young, the politicians were revered. Macmillan, Reb Butler, they were gods of their sort. I know they're your lot. I'll think of one of mine in a minute. Joe Grimond, absolutely respected. But that is gone. That is gone. And that's why I say we need to sign up to this. We need to agree to the principles and walk the walk. But we can't say to people who are thinking about becoming candidates, it's very easy, because it ain't. It can be very personal and nasty, and you have to have something of a thick skin. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Marino.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll keep it very brief and fully supportive of the motion. I'll be voting for it. The only thing I would say is I've been hearing a lot tonight about women and people from an ethnic minority background in particular being put off by certain levels of debate. And the only thing I want to stress is I really want to avoid a narrative of bigotry, of lower expectations. But we're all as capable, anyone from any gender or background is as capable as the other, and to put them, to mention those specific people being put off more than others does start to build that narrative. So I'm keen to avoid that. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, I agree, of course, with the motion, and I would say that local and national politicians who, either in person or use social media, which is a public forum, to put political arguments and support political causes, Councillor Brooks is quite right. They should realistically expect opponents to express genuine and sometimes robust disagreement with those arguments. That debate's an important part of our political process, but that must always stay on the right side of the line. By all means, bad policy should be criticised, but personal intimidation and abuse is completely unacceptable. I think it would serve us all well to recognise that despite all of our political disagreements, we're all here to do what we think is right for the residents of West Berkshire. We have different ideas about how to achieve that, but our end goal is the same, to make West Berkshire a better place for all of our residents. I think the problem sometimes begins when we're so convinced of our own righteousness, that our side alone is morally correct. Well, that must mean that our opponents are morally wrong. And if they're morally wrong, then they must be bad people. It's just a small step to that. And if they're bad people, then any action furthering our cause or damaging their cause is justified. And if that's the case, then they deserve abuse, they deserve intimidation. And we can feel good about dishing it out, all in the name of our own cause, because we're the goodies and they're the baddies. It's an old cliche, and I think there must be a wee bit of truth in it, that we Conservatives sometimes look at the more left-wing parties and think that they're misguided or wrong even, but their heart's in the right place. And sometimes we feel that from the other side, they just think we're bad people. And I think if we all accept that all of our hearts are in the right place, we're just disagreeing on how to use them, then civility in public life will remain very hard to come by. And I hope that doesn't remain the case for too long.
Thank you. Thank you. I know the closing of the debate, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you all. And another interesting debate, and one that is really important that we have. I think we're all agreeing. We all agree that we have a duty towards one another. And I think that was what tonight's debate was around. I could come back on Councillor Culver's points around particular parties, because I have just as much that I could say, but that wasn't about tonight's debate. Tonight's debate was actually, a lot of us agree most of the time. I don't want to hamper free speech. I don't actually, Councillor Brooks, want to take the passion out of debate as well, because very much that's why a lot of us are here. Well, I would love to let you stand up again, but for me, it's around actually having that respect, and respect is ultimately there. We're not trying to stand against Councillor Culver's amendment for any other reason than the fact that the LGA is doing a huge piece of work around that. They're looking at reviewing councillor codes of conduct to see if they can be improved, to see if they can be enhanced. There's a lot of work being done around digital citizenship and how we should all act and respond on social media, because I think that has a lot of issues of concern for so many people. It's an important part of our life. It's a way to contact with residents. We just need to understand how that works. And what this motion about today is that we need to lead by example. We need to treat each other with that respect and that ability to be civil towards each other. I don't know, civility is going to mean different things to different people. It's going to be subjective. There are things I've read and I sort of think, well, I don't think I'm a clueless dimwit and I don't think I'm a donkey, but that's what I get called. So, it's all, you have to take these things in perspective. So I'm really happy we're all agreeing. I'd like to thank Councillor Rolls for bringing this motion forward. I'd like to thank Councillor Rolls for her impassionate reflection on the recent horrific events. And I'd like to thank both Councillor Rolls, Councillor Culver, Councillor Vickers for the work that and Councillor Stewart for the work that they're doing to make this easier for women going forward, because it's something that certainly I'm looking to support them with, but I'm really happy that they're championing the cause.
Thank you. Councillor Rolls to finish the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very conscious of time. I'm not going to repeat. I can sense you're a bit nervous about the time. So I'd just like to thank everybody for the cross-party support tonight and hopefully a helpful debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I will ask the monitoring officer, please, to conduct the indicative vote.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll ask members now to raise their hands to support the motion brought forward by Councillor Rolls, which was subject to the clarification that was circulated earlier today. So can I ask members to raise their hands in support of that? I can see that there's already over 30 supporting that. So that is certainly indicating favour for this. Can I ask those members who've got their Zoom hands raised to now lower them? And I'll ask any members who are opposed to the motion to raise their hands. I can see no hands raised. So, Chairman, I would suggest that we now move or ask that members in the chamber now use their microphones to conduct a formal vote regarding this proposal. I think that there appears to be one vote that has not been cast, but that is 20 members in favour, and the motion is approved.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Brooks, as a point of order, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. And may I say well done, sir, because it's not been easy with all us windbags determined to talk on every motion, including me. But I do have to give notice that we will be calling an extra meeting of full council, and I'll be in touch with you about that with my 5 signatures to look at a date, because there's 4 really important motions we haven't got to tonight, and they're on both sides of the chamber. So seriously, we've got to have another meeting, Chairman, either an adjournment of this one or another one called, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman, just point to information, was my vote recorded in favour of that motion?
I believe so. I will ensure that it is. I think that the motion was clearly fully supported in the chamber, and if it's not on the recording, I will ensure that it is on the formal vote. But it wasn't a formally recorded vote anyway. But your support for the motion is noted.
Thank you. It is with some sadness and disappointment, unfortunately, that the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th and 8th motions will be deferred, and they will go to the next council meeting. And the members' questions will, all those questions, all those members will receive a written answer.
Forgive me, Chairman, you've just said the next council meeting, which I think is the budget meeting, which won't take motions, sir. So that is why I recommended.
I'll just.
You think about an adjournment, sir.
I think we may. Is that?
I think it's a matter for the chairman. If he has indicated that he wishes to defer these to the next meeting, the next scheduled meeting where we could consider these motions will be in March. And I think the 17th of March is the date that has been agreed. Clearly, there are statutory processes by which members of council can call a meeting of council, and that will be a matter for members to determine. But I think the chairman has given an indication of how he intends to deal with the business remaining on the agenda this evening.
Members, it is not an easy position as a chairman to make an assessment as to what the amount of business is on the agenda or how it's going to be dealt with. Right from the outset of those motions, I did ask everybody be succinct, no repetition. I had it in my mind because of the number of motions that had actually been put and the amount of business on the agenda, it was almost impossible to complete that business this evening. And I was really looking for as much help as I could get from all members. If they were enthusiastic to push all these motions through this evening, to approach it in a succinct and quick manner. That unfortunately tonight didn't happen. The motions generate an awful lot of debate, as they should have done and properly done. One thing we might consider is how many motions we put forward, how much business we put to this council. And the knock-on effect of the amount of work that's done through the officers once these motions go through and the paperwork that needs to be done and come back to council in whatever manner. So I think we've done as best as we could tonight. I'm disappointed that we didn't get certainly one more motion through this evening. I thought we might have to defer 2 of them, but the rest of the business I thought we would have concluded. But my apologies for not managing to get all the business through tonight. So on that, with 2 or 3 minutes to go to 10:30, I formally close the meeting and thank everybody for their contribution tonight. And I think it's time for to go home, safe journey, and have a large brandy.